across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Now, good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show, get it off your chest, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. Obviously, there is one hell of a lot to talk about today. It is Friday, June the 19th. Here's what's coming up. An emphatic victory for Andy Burnham in Makerfield, blowing Reform UK out of the park without the help of Restore Britain. Farage's frankly feeble candidate, Robert Kenyon, would have lost hands down even without the 7% share of the vote taken by Rupert Lowe's representative, Rebecca Shepherd. Reform suffered a heavy defeat all on their own. In fairness, Makerfield is a dyed-in-the-wool Labour constituency and Burnham garnered a lot of support from fed-up locals who just want to see the back of god-awful two-tier Keir. But make no mistake, this was a major spanner in the works for the Reform machine. Can Nigel's sorely wounded team recover? 03444991000. So stand by for Prime Minister Burnham and horror of horrors, Andy's balmy best mate Crazy Ed Miliband taking over from Rachel from Accounts as Chancellor of the Exchequer. You thought the past 2 years under the abysmal, incompetent Starmer were bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. Expert guests and analysis of the by-election that will turn the UK into a far-left basket case throughout the show. Join the debate. 0344 499 1000. Also, on today's electric show, the shocking truth behind the attempted murder at the zoo after a 3-year-old boy was hurled into the crocodile compound by a random stranger. Plus, could a seismic triumph by the Tories in South Aberdeen spell the beginning of the end for the SNP as supporters desert the party amid the slipstream of the Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell sleaze scandal? And what does this emphatic vote for more North Sea oil and gas drilling mean for Labour as Crazy Ed and his nut-zero nonsense puts thousands of furious Scots out of work? 03444 499 1000. And finally, you'll never guess, Trump's fabulous peace deal is off. I predicted his memorandum of understanding, as they call it, would last 48 hours. It's supposed to last 60 days, by the way. I said it would last 48 hours, but I was wrong again, It lasted 24 hours. Donald is trapped. He just can't get out of this Iran war, no matter how much he wants to. 03444 499 1000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Friday afternoon together and let's go straight over to my first guest, who I can't wait to hear what he thinks about the Makerfield result. Trevor Kavanagh, political correspondent, political columnist, former political editor at the Sun newspaper, Westminster veteran par excellence. Welcome, Trevor. Well, your initial thoughts. I mean, my headline on this is forget about Restore Britain. They turned out to be no factor whatsoever. Now, Andy Burnham, of course, garnered a lot of votes. Not just we've got to bear in mind, people say, oh, this is a disaster for reform. I think in some ways it is, but people do forget that Makerfield has forever been a dyed-in-the-wool Labour constituency. It's one of those northern Labour constituencies that residents there, they'd vote for a spaniel if it had a red rosette on it, if you know what I mean. So there's that. So it was always a challenge for reform. That said, also, Andy Burnham would have garnered a lot of votes from people who just want to see the back of Keir Starmer. But that all of that taken on board, I do think this was something of a catastrophe for Reform because Robert Kenyon and Reform UK would have lost this election, this by-election, all on their own without Restore. I think he was a feeble candidate. And I think Reform have got a lot of talking to do to themselves to work out how they go forward. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Kevin, that was a great opening monologue. I agree with every word you said. It was cheering along from this background.
Thank you.
But look, I think you're absolutely right about Reform. And I think that Nigel has to go away and pause and consider the outcome of this election. OK, he did very well in the local elections when people were much freer to simply express themselves about a protest party. But if he wants to be the party of government, a potential party of government, he's got to do better than that. He's got to win by-elections, and he hasn't won one for a while. So, you know, the sort of makeshift way that he's been running the Reform Party, the amateurish sort of hands-off, casual remarks, the interviews that he's been given, they're not really as impressive as they should be for a potential prime minister. I don't think that he's got that grip on policy that he really needs to make people sit up and think, this is the man we want to lead the country. And although you're perfectly right that a lot of people deserted the parties, including Reform, in order to register their anger at Keir Starmer personally, this was a desertion also from Reform for other reasons. And the candidate himself, as you also say, I think was a very poor choice. He wasn't properly primed. He wasn't given any sort of tutoring on how to handle the media, and it came across very badly when he was on Question Time.
Yeah, and I'm pretty certain. I mean, he was like the invisible man. I hear from friends in Reform that I don't want to sort of put him down too much, but apparently he worked very, very hard. You know, he seems like a decent local plumber, but nothing more than that. I think that Farage and Reform have got to get away from this, you know, plucky amateur syndrome. It's great. He's not a professional politician. Yeah, well, it damn well showed. And then there were these revelations about his social media background, suggesting that women only get abortions so they can have lots of sex, you know, using abortion as a method of contraception. That didn't go down well, and Reform now know, because this is a fact, Reform have a serious woman problem. A lot of women, for some reason, just don't like Reform. They're losing female votes. And, of course, this guy, Robert Kenyon, with his somewhat misogynist background on social media, didn't help that syndrome at all. And I think that what they should have done when that was discovered, instead of Farage going out, oh, come on, it was, you know, he's had a couple of drinks, there's a bit of banter with his mates, not going to take that too seriously, are we? That always seems to be Reform's response. They should have got on their knees and grovellingly apologised, and they might just about have got away with it. But women don't like that. Well, it's just a couple of blokes having a banter, you know, after a couple of beers. Yeah, that really will win the women around. They've got to think about this stuff. It's amateurish.
Well, also, it risks Farage himself being tarred with the same brush as this barroom plumber. Look, I'm not disparaging the bloke either. I think he actually looks like a pretty decent bloke, but he wasn't the material necessary to win a by-election as a potential MP. And that should have been sussed out weeks or months ago, long before he was finally selected for the job. And if indeed they went ahead with that selection, they should have set about some professional coaching so that he knew what not to say and what to say under questioning. And he failed on both counts there as he went through the examination of the electorate. So this is an avoidable error, and they keep doing it.
Exactly right. I mean, you know, Matt Goodwin, their candidate at Gorton and Denton, a very impressive man. I'm a big fan. But to send a posh, educated, white southern professor up to a solid northern working class constituency, Gorton and Denton, and expect him to do well, I mean, that was catastrophic as well. And then they went the other way with Robert Kenyon. They've got to get their act together. But let's just have a little look at Farage explaining away this serious setback for Reform.
What really happened here is it was vote Burnham, get Starmer out. which of course was our campaign message leading up to the locals on the 7th of May. So we were slightly hoist with our own petard.
Yeah, I mean, that's a line that they can take, but there was a lot more to this defeat than that, and Farage knows it. They've got to get their act together. They're just still, in my view, sometimes a bit amateurish. I mean, they've achieved remarkable things in a very short period of time, but sometimes, shall we say, their youthful innocence shows in the political arena. Let's play a little clip of, let's move on to the triumphant victor, Andy Burnham. Let's have a little look at his victory speech.
But I do say to my own party, this is a final chance to change. This is what people said directly to me on the hundreds of doorsteps that I stood on. We must hear it. We must act upon it. And we must get it right. There will be no second chance. But it is a chance now, from this result tonight, to build a new politics based on unity and hope, turning away from the path that takes us to a divided, dark politics of the kind we see in the United States. We must now take this path and put this country back on the right path and bring people back together and get things working properly again.
Yeah, we just do not want any of that decisive leadership that Donald Trump provides for America, do we? We mustn't have that kind of decisiveness. Thank you for that, Andy. In that speech, he also said, you know, we all know trickle-down economics doesn't work. Well, actually, it does. So this guy, he is a far-left virtual communist. His Chancellor of the Exchequer, he is going to be Prime Minister now, sooner or later. His Chancellor of the Exchequer is almost certainly going to be horror of horrors, Ed Miliband. He's going to bring into the cabinet a convicted criminal, going to make a Secretary of State of Louise Haigh, who Keir Starmer sacked upon discovering she was a convicted criminal, so make of that what you will. There'll be a place for streeting, but this guy, Burnham, is going to create the cabinet from hell so far left that he's going to face real problems with the markets and the city, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that Andy Burnham has in common with the man he wants to depose is that nobody knows exactly what either of them stand for, including themselves, it seems. One minute they say they're in favor of this, like rejoining the European Union, then say no. The next minute they're talking about busting the markets, bucking the markets, and then they say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick by the Treasury rules. First of all, they're backing the WASPy women, and then they're not. I mean, where do we stand? What is this change? Where is this path, the righteous path, that he claims he's going to follow? He's not told us anything about the policies that Burnham Labour government would follow. You do get a clue, though, from the sight of probably the most left-wing person in Parliament, who is John McDonnell, who is the Corbynite MP, almost weeping, literally weeping over the prospect of high taxes on the wealthy, wealth redistribution, he calls it. But that means anyone earning more than the minimum wage is going to be hammered under a Burnham government. And I think that's the only promise that we know for sure is going to be delivered.
Absolutely. The prospect is absolutely terrifying. I mean, the only thing, you know, that I'm kind of hoping for, you probably share my view on this, is that Andy Burnham, I think he's probably cleverer than Liz Truss, but there's a possibility here he could do a Liz Truss and deliver such a radical far-left agenda that the city and the markets just won't have it. I think there'll be real problems if he does appoint Ed Miliband as Chancellor, but fingers crossed that all goes wrong and his government falls apart in about 2 weeks and we have to have a general election. Meanwhile, there's that guy, two-tier Keir, still here Keir. That's his new name. He will not leave. Let's have a listen to his reaction to Andy's triumph.
There isn't a leadership contest at the moment. There isn't one at the moment. But as I've said on many, many occasions, I don't think that's a good thing for the country, to plunge us into chaos. I would also add that now that Andy has won, which is really important, really good, he's a huge asset to us, then now will inevitably be a Manchester mayoralty by-election starting straight away. It's important that we pull together for that. But if there is a contest, just to be clear with you, then yes, I will run, I will stand, and I've said repeatedly, I'm not going to walk away from that.
Is he really going to carry on like this, Trevor? I mean, we know now that, very soon we're hearing that a number of cabinet secretaries, major cabinet secretaries, we believe Ed Miliband and Shabana Mahmood, maybe others, are going. So Ed Miliband and Shabana definitely, we hear, and Lisa Nandy are going to come out and say, come on, lay out your path to leaving. Come on, stop this nonsense. So once they start doing that, surely he's going to drop this absolute deluded stance that somehow he's going to carry on. Because this is getting ridiculous, isn't it?
Yes, he is delusional. This is happening as we speak. And I think that we will have a new Prime Minister, or at least a contest underway, if there's going to be a contest at all. The measures being undertaken to replace Keir Starmer are underway as we speak, and I think that he will either be signalling his departure, setting a timetable, some sort of dignified, if he can be, departure by the time we finish the weekend. So I'd give him the 72 hours before we get to that point. And there is no doubt, as you say, that were he to hesitate, he would be pushed, and they're already lining up in large numbers to do this. And if you get the cabinet saying to a prime minister, we cannot support you any longer, then no prime minister can resist that.
Yeah, he's getting, isn't he, like the famous Monty Python, you know, knight in shining armour that gets his arms chopped off and say, I'll take you with my other arm. They chop his arm off. Come on, I'll kick your head in. They chop his legs off. Come on, I'll bite you. I'll bite, you know. He just will not, he doesn't know when to stack his cards, does he?
No, 'tis but a scratch. Yes.
Yes.
No, but I mean, look, he's completely incompetent as a prime minister, as a politician, as a thinker, and as a tactician. I mean, he has failed on every count since becoming prime minister, literally from day one. His misjudgments have been catastrophic, and the trail of disasters stretches right back to the moment he was picked as leader. He's got no ideas, no plans, no thoughts, no ideology. And the revelation that he doesn't even dream or have a favourite book tells you just about everything about this.
Yes, doesn't dream, doesn't have a favourite book. He apparently, when Sue Gray, his disastrous chief of staff, his great idea, when he first won, sat down with him and said, so what's your first 100-day plan? And he said, what 100-day plan? Just to reiterate, you made that point. You reckon that by Monday we will see some serious movement in terms of the cabinet ganging up on Keir Starmer, and maybe Starmer finally, the penny dropping for him, and him perhaps laying out a route for his departure?
Well, you can just imagine, Kevin, can't you, the Sunday papers. They're going to be all over this. They'll be talking to everyone who's prepared to speak out against Keir Starmer. And there are more of these than you can count. You can't shake a stick at the number of people who just want him to go. And they will be saying this to him loud and clear. And what they will be offering him is, you know, you've got one chance. If you want to go with dignity, this is it. Spell out some terms and we'll try and accommodate you. But you're going. Just wake up to that fact.
Well, I'm with the England football fans who constantly chant this, even though they have been banned by FIFA from doing so. The American stadiums are echoing to the chant of Keir Starmer's A. And I'm not allowed to say the word, but I'll tell you what, Trevor, it rhymes with banker, and I'm not talking about the word tanker. Good to talk to you, Trevor. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week. That's Trevor Kavanagh. political columnist at The Sun. Next up, our very own son of Makerfield will be in the studio. Pete Barnes will get his take on what's happened to his hometown now that, I guess, well, his family at least have a new MP. He is Andy Burnham. We'll talk to Pete Barnes next. Stay where you are.
Like that.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As I said, our very own son of Makerfield, Wigan boy, Peter Barnes is in the studio, political strategist, of course. Now, a couple of months back, in May, when Andy Burnham got the green light, was allowed to stand as a candidate in that constituency, Makerfield, Pete was my guest, and I asked him what chance he thought Andy Burnham had. Here's what Pete had to say.
Perfect constituency for Reform UK. It genuinely is. And, you know, I'm not their biggest fan, but the one thing I will say, they have got a fantastic ground game. Yeah. They've got people in that area that know what they're doing. Because you go back to 2024, at that general election, when, you know, Reform wasn't even a thing properly, 39% of the vote. They really know what they're doing. This is a place that Reform could do very well in.
So, yeah, just to sort of probably repeat myself, but you know, Andy Burnham trying to sell the people of Makerfield the policies of Labour. We will get closer to Europe. We will double down on net zero, and we will go very soft on the migrants. The migrant crisis will continue. Him trying to sell those three policies to the people of Makerfield is going to go down like a cup of cold sick.
Pretty much.
Now, I played that partly to embarrass you, but I totally agreed with you at the time, and that's what we have to talk about, because Makerfield is 97% white working class, and 65% of them are leavers, dyed-in-the-wool Brexiteers. My question to you, Pete, is if they can't... Now, you know, as I said to Trevor Kavanagh, we've got to be fair to them. Yeah. Makerfield is dyed-in-the-wool Labour. It was always a challenge for Reform, but they did badly. If they can't do better in a place like Makerfield, 97% white working class, 65% dyed-in-the-wool Brexiteers, they're in trouble, aren't they?
Yeah, in that interview, I went on to say that Andy Burnham stands about as much chance of winning as an ice cube in hell.
Yes,
unfortunately, Reform did the impossible and managed to make hell freeze over. I mean, it's astounding to me. They ran probably one of the worst campaigns ever because they misunderstood the point of what Robert Kenyon was. Just because you live in a postcode, that's not a qualification. The point of a local candidate is to take the national and you make it hyper-local. So you take the small boats and you directly link it to that Miss GP appointment, to that housing problem. You have to focus the voter purely in the constituency. The minute they all started running around saying Andy Burnham is going to be the Prime Minister, you allowed the voter the opportunity to get rid of a very unpopular Prime Minister with a guy who went into this by-election who had a positive polling rating. So in what world were they not going to say, oh, I don't like that one, but I like this guy, and that's what they did?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so this guy, Kenyon, I mean, he was like the invisible man.
Oh,
we hardly heard from him, and I think that's because Reform increasingly realised that every time he opened his mouth, he didn't exactly bring the voters pouring in.
That's very true.
Now, I don't want to put Robert Kenyon down. He seems like a decent guy, decent local, hard-working plumber, but he's got this social media background, particularly these comments about women having abortion just so they can have sex with anyone they want. That could be arguably seen as kind of misogynist. Now, Reform tried to sort of kick that into the long grass by saying, oh, well, it's just banter between blokes, Well, Reform have a problem. They know this. They're a very blokey party.
Oh, yeah.
And women don't particularly... They haven't got a woman problem. Now, they knew this before they chose Kenyon. And I still can't get it through my head why they didn't research, why they didn't vet this guy enough to discover this background he has on social media. That was just hapless, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it's a repeated problem. You've had multiple times, even councillors, have had to be pulled from the party, and we've had by-elections. I think there was one just yesterday where a guy in Essex who had a questionable social media post. And yet again, it is these small things that a political party has to do, because they know that the left is going to go through and become an archaeologist and go through these timelines. They're going to do this. Reform aren't doing the hard yards that they need to do to make sure the candidates are squeakier than clean. It's not right that they're being, judged harsher, but that's the game in front of them. Reform have it in their heads that they just get to dictate the terms because they're winning in the polling. All that means is it's not really you're the most popular, you're the least hated.
Yeah, but also, Pete, the truth is, Reform, to their credit, they're a new operation and they've achieved wonders in a very short period of time.
Without a doubt.
But there are millions of people in Britain who support Reform's policies. But there's a problem here because we've now had 2 by-elections in a row where their candidates have frankly been, no-hopers. Now, Matt Goodwin, I've got loads of time for him. I really admire him. He's a brilliant thinker. But he's an academic. He's a Southern professor. Yeah. To send him up to a solid northern working class constituency like Gorton and Denton and say, wouldn't working class people mind voting for you? I mean, terrible candidate for that place. I mean, he's not a terrible... Don't get me wrong. And then, so they obviously overcompensated and said, oh, look, blimey, a plumber won in Gorton and Denton. Let's get a plumber and let's make sure they're local. Well, so far, so good, but you needed a lot more than that. I mean, again, he seemed like a nice guy, seriously, but he was a feeble candidate.
He was a weak candidate, but the reality is, the minute that Andy Burnham was actually blocked by the NEC, that is when the Reform Party should have started preparing for Andy Burnham, the candidate, no matter where he was going to stand. They should have vetted. They should have had a candidate ready in every constituency in Greater Manchester. That's the bit they should have done, where, you could really go through the social media, you could get them through training and all that time. You had weeks to get this ready, and that's the bit they didn't do. They would rather stare at their own reflection and look at all these wonderful polling results than actually do the hard yards and the bit they had to do. It is actually laziness on the part of Reform UK, in my opinion, that has led to this problem, because the woman problem also comes from the fact that they didn't talk about the economy. One of the biggest issues that women always have is economic, and making sure their kids have a job. That it's economic instability. They didn't talk about the economy between October and 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a huge problem.
I don't know what their candidate. I could barely. I gather that, to be fair to Robert, apparently he worked round the clock, worked his backside off. But you know, hard work doesn't necessarily equal success, and it's certainly. I don't know what their campaign was actually all about. They had a little spurt of saying Andy Burnham let women down in the rape gang scandal. They should have attacked him a lot more in terms of. Listen, you vote for this guy, he'll be our next Prime Minister. And if you think Starmer's bad, this guy is going to take the disaster of our left-wing tendency onto a whole new level.
Yeah, and it's the bit after that. And here's why: he should have been prosecuted. Yeah. He was a professional politician with 9 years of absolute terror that they could have gone after, and they just spent the entire time with kind of vague threats about how he was going to be worse than Starmer. Again, the popular guy is not being seen as the threat against Keir Starmer. It's just not going to work. He should have been prosecuted on things like the kind of failed ULEZ scheme, on the rape gangs inquiry. Every single time he opened his mouth, he should have been having to explain his decisions, not advocate for the future, because reform have to get out of negative campaigning. Andy Burnham only ever talks about tomorrow. He speaks about the future. So he's not interested in what's happening
that's
now.
What I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about Burnham's. Listen, before you go, let me ask you about this. I mean, such is the nature of this catastrophe. There is speculation in Westminster that Farage may even resign. This is Politics UK tweeting this. A Tory source predicts Nigel Farage will soon quit as Reform leader over the Makerfield by-election. The quote from this unnamed Tory is, "We are watching the slow puncher of the Reform balloon. They had a 10-point lead over Labour in the polls and won every seat in Makerfield at the locals, but as they have at the last 3 by-elections, Reform have lost yet again." Farage is ducking press conferences to avoid answering questions about his £5 million crypto bung. Azir Yousaf is too chicken to stand as a candidate. It is now surely only a matter of time before tired Nigel picks up his ball and goes home, leaving a bunch of hopeless nobodies to squabble over the remains of a turquoise travesty. I mean, this is pure Westminster gossip, but they say that Makerfield may lead to the resignation of Nigel Farage. Where will that lead Reform?
Oh, it'll pass the popcorn, because you think the destruction of the Conservative Party was entertaining. To watch this lot will tear each other apart. Let's be real. Azir Yousaf has been gunning for Nigel's job for quite some time. That's what that shot across the bow was with his spat with Robert Jenrick. That was to test Nigel's control of the party. Because you're right, there's been a lot of the big losses have been very substantial, because it's when you've been tested for parliamentary seats, you've been left wanting. Essentially, basically the Lib Dems of the right. You could have potholes, you're not getting national security. Absolutely. And that is the big difference between why they're a protest party and they're not moving into executive authority, because they don't have a policy platform.
I think they could still be a serious political force, a serious phenomenon with a serious chance of forming the next government, but they've just been very amateurish in the last 3 by-elections. They've got to get more professional. I agree with you, Pete. Great to have you on. I'm glad you're happy about your new MP. No, you're not. Right, that was Pete Barnes, political strategist, our son of Makerfield. Next up, we're going to talk to Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control. We're going to talk about the madness of Labour lunatic Thangam Debonair. I was actually watching this live. She came on the TV to do a little debate at the Makerfield count with Sarah Pochin from Reform UK. And, I mean, she just completely lost it. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go over to my next guest. He's a regular. I think he was on yesterday. It's always good to have him on the show, but I thought this was one for him. It's Robert Bates, the Centre for Migration Control, where he is the research director. Now, Robert, I don't know if you saw this, but if you didn't, it's well worth watching again. This is the former Labour MP, Thangham Debonair. The crazy name, crazy woman. And she was on Sky News last night at the Count in Makerfield having a debate with Sarah Pochin. And she somewhat suffered some kind of weird meltdown. Watch this.
If people apply for asylum, that is to have refugee status. That is not the same. Are you ever going to let me finish the sentence?
They're allowed to stay for 10 years plus, and they are lost.
Let her talk.
They
There's
are
no
lost
point.
in our society. The Home Office don't know where they are.
Right, so none of these things are true, and you know it, Sarah. Just repeatingly saying that the only danger. If you're saying that the only danger, are you really saying the only danger to women is from people who come from other countries? Are you really saying that there are no white people, white men who? And you keep cutting in.
We're talking about domestic
and you
violence
keep smiling when we're talking about violence against women and girls.
I don't understand why you
really. Oh my God!
Oh
my God! I have 26 years of experience in violence against women and girls.
20 years.
Oh well, I see you and raise you 6 years, Sarah. There are women being raped by white men, and you don't want to talk about that. You only want to talk about when there's an incident of violence against women and girls by someone who is brown. That is your thing, and you want to blame all brown people. You want to blame all brown people, and you are causing harm to actual people.
Well, you see, Robert, here's the thing. Sarah Pochin's a racist, according to Thangham Debonair, but Thangham isn't a racist. Sarah's a horrible right-wing fascist, but Sarah is a lovely left-wing, be kind, virtue-signalling, nice person. That's the tenor of her argument. That debate, if you can call it that, her losing it, was about this. It was essentially the suggestion or the fact that our migrant crisis has encompassed us as a nation importing a sex crime problem. We have, because the fact of the matter is that the migrants, the asylum seekers that we've let in commit a massively disproportionate amount of sex crimes compared to indigenous white British men. Afghani migrants, asylum seekers here, are 22 times more likely to be arrested or convicted of a sex crime than a British white guy. That's what Sarah was saying. And Thangham comes up with the classic left-wing rebuttal of that fact. It's the vast majority of rapes are committed by white British men. Yeah, that's because there's about 30 million of them. You know, it's just nonsense. And when Sarah is just saying a fact, that's what these left-wingers do. They just lose it, and they refuse to accept that their saint-like stance can be challenged in any way. It's a problem, isn't it?
Well, it is, especially when it is accompanied by a disgustingly unhinged performance such as that. I think the biggest problem, and obviously there was a lot of conversation decades ago about scrapping Latin from the school curriculum, is we now have people that don't understand the concept of per capita. Of course, the majority of crimes in this country are still committed by British men. They are still the majority of men in this country. But what we do know as a fact is that up to a third of sexual assaults on women over the age of 16 are committed by foreign nationals every year. We know from the government's own chief immigration advisor that those nationalities most likely to come across on the small boats and claim asylum are far more likely to be convicted of sex attacks. We know that the BBC has even reported similar findings now and been very almost forced into admitting that actually the small boats crisis has a direct impact on the safety of women and girls. And then when you couple with the point that Sarah Pochin was trying to raise, that we don't know where a lot of these individuals are, again, that is just a fact that the Public Accounts Committee, the National Audit Office, the Home Office's own data shows. She's greeted with this hysteria and this just squawking. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people on the left, rather than debate topics that they find uncomfortable, they think that if they put on enough of a performance, enough of an emotive display of anger and aggression, that somehow conveys to the viewers that they're actually right and they're just being put up against by these right-wing bigots. No, this is why the conversation is being repeatedly derailed. And all it really does, and Thangam Debonair was, of course, trying to present herself as the champion of women's safety, but it actually harms women's safety when we're not able to confront what are cold, hard facts.
Yeah, it's exactly right, Robert. And, of course, she played the racist card as well. Yeah. You know, she still said, are you really saying that white men aren't responsible for the majority of rapes? No, she's not saying that. But the fact is, disproportionately, immigrants, foreign nationals are guilty of more sex crimes proportionally than indigenous white males. It's a fact, but it's a fact that people like Thangam Debonair cannot get to grips with. They cannot take that. And also they use the whole debate as a pathetic excuse to signal their own virtue. You're a racist, but hey, look at me. I'm not a racist. Oh, well done. Sarah Poshin is not a racist, by the way. That's another point I wanted to ask you about, Robert. This will, you will have noticed, it's an interesting story. Now, this ongoing process of our fabulous Labour government, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, for now, moving asylum seekers, our 104, there's about 30,000 of asylum seekers in hotels at the moment. And the Labour project, which they're selling to us left, right and centre, is let's get them out of hotels into army barracks, disused air bases and that kind of thing, because it'll save us so much money, as if that's all we're asking for. Oh, we don't mind all these illegal immigrants being all over the country, as long as you can put them up somewhere that doesn't cost that much. That isn't what we want. We don't actually really care where you put them. But Labour is saying, yeah, but look at the money we'll save. OK, so that's good to save taxpayers' money in any circumstance. Here's the deal. This has just emerged today. Right, housing illegal migrants in army barracks costs more than housing them in asylum seeker hotels. New figures have revealed that it costs an average of £160 a night to keep migrants, to put asylum seekers into army barracks, particularly the one in Crowborough, where they're being shipped in at the moment. 350 there at the moment. There will be 540 when they finish filling that place with migrants, with asylum seekers. Yeah, they are costing £160 a night. The average cost of housing migrants in hotels is £144 a night. So this is another crock of crap being sold to us by this lousy Labour government.
Well, absolutely. And think of how many plane tickets you could actually buy with the money that we are spending on this accommodation. Even a week's worth you could buy several for several individuals. I think the Labour government have really made a rod for their own back by focusing on the cost element of the asylum crisis, as if we, as you say, we would all be happy if we still had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men just roaming around the streets of Britain, so long as the cost was not quite as much. But they completely, and I think willfully, missed the point on all of this crisis. When it comes to, for instance, the use of hotels, they were very, very clear that actually the Labour government, in their mind's eye, it was just the use of hotels by railway stations or in retail parks and so forth. And actually, they thought the British public would be happy if these individuals instead were put in HMOs or sites such as this. It's a complete misunderstanding of what the actual temperament and mood of the British public is, and actually how the hotels were more used as a kind of totemic example of just how bad the system is failing this country. Unfortunately, the Labour government don't really have that ideological underpinning as to what is driving concern about this crisis, and therefore they're going to keep getting beat from pillar and post as these. And I imagine there'll be a lot more of this coming out in the coming years as they keep getting done over by contracts or renovation works and so forth. But I think actually there is a lot that they could do to bring down the costs as well. Like, let's stop giving arts classes to people that are being put in asylum accommodation. Let's stop giving them all these round-the-clock welfare and holistic treatments and so forth. Let's
Free
stop giving
trips
them...
to the zoo and football matches, cricket games, and trampoline lessons, driving yeah, don't give them any of that. That would help, wouldn't it?
Well, exactly. All the 24-hour access to medical services on site, which we, of course, again, was another thing we were told just simply isn't happening. Well, it is happening. There are GPs and medical support staff situated on these sites pretty much round the clock, especially at the barracks that are now being opened across the country. It's just this, I think, an example of the way the Labour government are trying to handle the asylum crisis is the biggest disconnect between what the public actually feel and what their approach and concerns are on an issue and the solutions that are being put forward. They're trying to solve a problem and address concerns that just don't actually exist, and instead, actually, they should be spending that money on detaining and deporting individuals.
You're exactly right. This is this Labour government's big trick. Answering questions that we're not asking. And we're not asking, please, can you save money while still letting in thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants? We're saying, stop them coming in. So that is where we stand. And Robert, great to have you on the show. Have a fabulous weekend. Robert Bates there, the director for the Centre of Migration Control. Next up, we're going to go to Mike Neville, former Met Police detective, and talk about this crock shock attempted murder where a 3-year-old boy, it's all over the front pages of the papers today. We broke it yesterday afternoon. Couldn't quite believe my eyes. My producer Ryan hands me this piece of paper. I said, what? A 3-year-old boy thrown into a crocodile pen at a zoo in Cambridge. And then the even more shocking news that the person who threw the boy in didn't know him and didn't know the family. Well, we'll tell you the story behind that after this break. And we'll also talk about the phenomenon of shocking random crimes. So Mike Neville next and the crocodile attempted murder. Stay tuned.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Get your calls in about Makerfield. What do you think about this? How do you feel about the prospect of a far-left Prime Minister, which is what Andy Burnham will be? Couldn't Reform have done better? They didn't do very well, did they? Restore Britain, forget it. They're not even at the races. They didn't affect the result. If they weren't there, if Robert Kenyon got every single one of Rebecca Shepherd, the Restore Britain candidates' votes, he still would have comprehensively lost to Andy Burnham. Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. Do you fancy Ed Miliband as your Chancellor, because it looks like that's what you're going to get. We're going to have convicted criminal Louise Haigh as a Secretary of State. That's great, isn't it? Marvellous. I don't get that, by the way. Keir Starmer discovers that she's a sort of phone fraud. She's a convicted criminal when she was Transport Secretary, and basically said, sorry, Louise, you're going to have to go. I can't have a convicted criminal in my cabinet. And then along comes Andy Burnham, who's going to bring her straight back. She's been running his campaign in Makerfield. She's going to become a Secretary of State. Will be our first, I think, convicted criminal who is a Secretary of State, one of the great offices of state. It's great, isn't it? That's the way Westminster works. Your thoughts, folks? 03444991000. Let's go over now to... Oh, no. Let's play a voice note before we talk to Mike Neville. This is Carl on Makerfield.
You're right what you're saying. Basically, Wigan and Makerfield's always been Labour. And also, as well, people there are thinking, oh, great, if we get him as MP, he'll be our Prime Minister and he'll make Makerfield fantastic. Plus, he's been Mayor 10 years, so he's got everything going for him. It was always going to be an hard task for reform. The only reason he got in is because of his recognition. And also, the big one is, vote for Burnham and you'll get rid of Starmer. And that's what it was all about. I'm not worried whatsoever. I think Reform is still going to do fine.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Carl. They still could have done a lot better. They could have done a lot better. That was a shellacking they took. There are a lot of other factors. You're absolutely right. Dyed in the wool. Labour constituency, the chance to have a Prime Minister as your MP, and also a way to get rid of Starmer. So that was all stacked against reform, but that wasn't all it was. They did badly. Simple as that. Let's go over to former Met Police Detective Mike Neville. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, good evening, Kevin.
Now, I want to talk about this, obviously, the shocking incident yesterday at a zoo, Johnson Zoo in Cambridgeshire. Where suddenly a 3-year-old boy who was there with his family, a guy comes up, picks him up and throws him into the crocodile pen. Poor kid's got a broken pelvis, a broken arm, and was actually attacked by the crocodiles. Now, here's to one of the zookeepers, the wife of the owner. What a hero. She leapt in among the crocodiles and pulled this kid to safety. So she should get the Victoria Cross or something. Well done. Brilliant. But let's talk about... I mean, we now know police have released this guy on remand. He's on the hook for attempted murder, but it turns out he's severely mentally disabled. And I think... And he broke free from his carers on a trip to the zoo. And then, this awful incident happened. I think the carers, by the way, have got to think about where they take these people on day trips in future, but that's another issue. But it's still very random, isn't it? And I thought we might sort of talk about the random nature of that. I did a item earlier in the week, and we talked about the Putney Pusher, that jogger. There he is. This is 9 years ago. Watch the... Boom! The police have finally arrested somebody. We don't know if he's actually the perpetrator, but that was completely random. Then you had that kid who was thrown off a balcony from the Tate Gallery, completely random. You were a copper for a long time. Tell us about this syndrome. You must have encountered these crimes that just happen for absolutely no reason. They must be hard for a copper to deal with.
Well, very difficult, and they're very rare. That's the good thing. I mean, my son was talking to me. My grandson is 3 years old, and he said, imagine taking him to the zoo and somebody doing this wicked deed. And if you looked at the case at the Tate Gallery in 2020, the man was convicted of that, but he'd had dark thoughts about attacking a young child. So there's usually some kind of motive here. And what I'd be looking at, if I was investigating this, of course, you've got to look at, what is this man's history? What's the background here? Whoever you deal with for these random crimes, there's very few crimes without a motive. And if you're dealing with somebody who's got mental health issues, like the man at the Tate who threw the French boy over the side of the building. He'd made all sorts of confessions, and so you've got to really look at the professionalism of the people who decide to take them to anywhere or allow them to go where they're a danger to the public. I've dealt with some strange crimes. I was messaging you earlier, wasn't I? I was at one of his young officers at the local fire station. Somebody at the fire station, somebody with access, was interfering with the breathing apparatus. Why would anybody do that? That crime was never solved.
Never solved. Yeah.
I dealt with a case of an African man just dead in a bedsit with no history of illness, no history of taking drugs or drink, nothing there in the post-mortem, completely sealed up behind a locked door, no one there. So there are these random cases that occur. But when you're a senior police officer, if you deal with something strange like this case, which will involve sort of animal experts and there will always be files at the police college. We slag off the College of Policing, but you can look back at something that's similar, so you can learn the lessons from the previous case. But as I said, thankfully, these cases are very, very rare.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's the human condition. We feel that everything must have a logical explanation. Sometimes they just don't. But it sounds this guy who did this is, or allegedly did it, apparently has severe mental disabilities. So we'll watch what happens in that case. A quick word, though, if you will, Mike, about Tracy Johnson. She's the owner and zookeeper of this zoo in Johnson Zoo in Huntingdon, I think it is, in Cambridgeshire. She heard this blood-curdling scream of this poor little boy who was hurled over a 4-foot safety fence 15 feet down into the crocodiles, where there were there were a dozen crocodiles and alligators, including 2 massive Nile crocs, funnily enough called Romeo and Cuddles. They're like 9 foot and 11 foot long. And at least one of these alligators or crocodiles attacked the kid. Kid obviously suffered some injuries from being thrown down, but there was a blood-curdling cry. The people who were there were all crying and screaming, and Tracy Johnson sprinted across the zoo and leapt into the crocodile pit and plucked the kid to safety. What a hero.
Absolutely, and the medal there, somebody does so great. It's the George Cross is awarded to civilians who do sort of wonderfully brave acts, where they save somebody else that's not in a sort of wartime situation. The Victoria Cross is a sort of battle situations, but the George Cross is of equal value. And it sounds like that this lady should be put forward for an award of that nature to put herself at risk. It just shows, amongst all the wickedness of the world, Kevin, there is some good things, isn't there? And it's nice to hear.
Exactly. You get these horror stories, and very often you can take some small solace from a heroic act that makes it not quite so bad. So here's to Tracy Johnson, and let's hope for a full recovery for that poor kid. Mike, good to have you on the show, as always. Have a fantastic weekend. Mike Neville there, former Met Police detective. When we come back after the news, we're going to talk to our presenter and roving reporter, ace reporter, Samara Gill, who has just got back from Makerfield. We'll get her thoughts on what she discovered while she was up there and get her thoughts about the future for reform. So that next, stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, in a little while, we're going to talk about a couple of stories. This wasn't the only by-election yesterday. There was a very significant one in South Aberdeen in Scotland, which, against all the odds, turned into a stunning victory in Scotland for the Tories. The SNP kicked out of the park, knocked out of the water by the Tory candidate, and because the SNP, to these people in Aberdeen, stand for less drilling in the North Sea, nut zero rubbish, and they're losing jobs. Meanwhile, that's going to spell... So also, it proves, or one would suggest, it proves that the sleaze scandal surrounding former leader Nicola Sturgeon and her now jailed husband, the chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, is having an effect. It's the beginning of the end for the SNP, and it's not good news for Labour up there, because, of course, the reason thousands and thousands of Scots are losing their jobs in the North Sea is because of crazy Ed Miliband. Very significant by-election. We'll talk about that in a little while. Also, we need to say, by the way, the peace deal, the memorandum of understanding between America and Iran is off. The peace talks in Switzerland are cancelled because Israel immediately bombed Hezbollah in Lebanon. I said that peace, as it were, the cessation of hostilities, that Donald Trump made a big song of dance about, you know, his silly signature that takes him about 10 minutes to write in Versailles, the new Treaty of Versailles. I said it will last 48 hours if you're lucky. I was wrong. Lasted 24 hours. We'll talk about that in just a little while, but in the studio it is our ace roving reporter, Samara Gill. Welcome, Samara.
Hello, Kev. Great to be here.
You've been up in Makerfield, just got back, literally just walked into the building in the nick of time, folks. I was getting furious with her, but she made it.
I did.
Well, you spoke to some people up there. I mean, I think the story is this was more than a bad night for reform. It was a catastrophic night. Let's have a look at... Well, you talk us through some of the people you spoke to, and then we'll discuss the ramifications. So what have we got?
Yeah, it was really terrible, but it wasn't for the reason I think everyone predicted that it would be. It was, you know, everyone thought that Restore might split the vote. That obviously didn't happen.
Yeah, Reform lost all on their own.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of what happened in Gorton and Denton, where they thought Advance might split the vote, and Advance, you know, got literally 100 votes. So what's interesting is now that Reform is having to come face-to-face with its real contender, which is Labour. Labour potentially under Andy Burnham. Let's have a listen to a Reform supporter and see what he said.
What do you think about Andy Burnham in general? Do you think he'll fix this town? Do you think he'll fix Wigan? Or is this just another stepping stone for Westminster?
It's just another stepping stone for Westminster. They're not going to do that. It's just false promises all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The government itself in French is lies. Nigel, good man, good art, but he needs to get with Rupert Law.
Right.
A team up, boom, clean all these towns up. You know what I mean? Bring it back to how it used to be.
Yeah.
The community.
Interesting.
Very interesting. It seems like Reform really ran on, you know, a method of divisiveness. They did want to divide people in terms of this is us and Labour is them, and Labour's trying to destroy the country. Andy Burnham did seem to run on the message of hope. When I've just come from his speech that he did, and, you know, we can be as cynical as we want to, but he did have a very positive message to put out there to the people. He has hope. And at the moment, hope is winning over maybe some of the more aggressive tactics that Restore and Reform have been using. That's just the facts. That's what we can see today has happened with this by-election.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to Reform, I was saying this to Trevor Kavanagh earlier, a lot of factors were stacked against them. First of all, people always forgot throughout this campaign, Makerfield is a dyed-in-the-wool Labour constituency.
Yeah.
It's been Labour since the year dot. and those northern constituency, full of those white working class people, they're full of people who would vote for a spaniel if it had a red rosette pinned to its dog lead or something. Yeah. So there was always that. So Reform had a challenge. It were, you know, they were the insurgents. That said, you know, Makerfield is 97% white working class and 65% solid Brexiteers. If Reform UK can't do better than that in a constituency like that, they've got trouble.
These are seats that they are meant to take from Labour, and very easily, and they didn't achieve that. And yes, you're right, you know, it has been held by Labour for over 100 years, but this is the territory that Reform has claimed that they're coming for. The issue is, I think, when having just been in Makerfield, it lacks the two Ds, deprivation and diversity. It doesn't have either of those things, which has actually been quite helpful for Reform in places like Gorton and Denton, where you had a Muslim community that was voting in one way and upsetting another side, and then they were saying that they want to vote Reform because they want to upset that community. So it also doesn't have deprivation. It is a lovely town, objectively. It's a quiet countryside place. It's the posh end of Wigan, as people would describe it. It just doesn't have those issues that Reform does tend to run on, like unfettered migration, crime, things like that. It doesn't really, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but even looking at statistics and things like that when I was reading up on Makerfield, it just doesn't really have those glaring problems. So that could have also been a factor.
Indeed. Well, shall we have a listen to... first, let's have a listen to Nigel Farage first, sort of talking down the level of this disaster, I think, for Reform.
What really happened here is it was vote Burnham, get Starmer out, which of course was our campaign message leading up to the locals on the 7th of May. So we were slightly hoist with our own petard.
I mean, it's a fair, as I say, it's a fair point, but look, I don't want to come, you know, pile down too hard on Robert Kenyon. He seems like a decent guy, a hard-working local plumber and all that. But
it was almost not fair to put him in that position, I have to say.
He's a plucky amateur, completely out of his depths. He was a terrible, terrible, feeble candidate, let's be honest.
Question time was very rough.
Question time, it wasn't very good on Question Time. Reform should have discovered his dubious social media background, that post about women getting abortions so they can screw around, you know, come on. Reform have got a woman problem. Women don't tend to like Reform because it's such a blokey party, and that didn't help. So I just can't understand how they were so amateurish to choose this guy who, frankly, you know, he just didn't step up to the plate.
Yeah, I think it's two-sided. I think he did give it a red-hot go, but
he worked very hard, don't get me wrong. I don't want to put him down. You know.
But I also think that it was unfair to put a plumber against someone who describes himself as a king. I mean, it was that's the type of race it was. Andy Burnham does have years of experience within Westminster. He knows how to answer questions. He is a mayor of a massive place. You know, this isn't new for him, but it was all new for Robert, who got thrust into this and had to learn really, really quickly. And it was a very pivotal by-election. The pressure was on. And I think Reform is going to have to assess what they do in the future with picking their candidates, because on one hand, they do want to have the everyman. Their whole thing is, we're going to put real people in Parliament. But then when they actually try that, it's a little harder in practice when you put those people up against, you know, people who've been in the game for a long time. Even on Question, if we hark back to Question Time, which wasn't the full picture, but the Conservative candidate, I thought, came across really well on Question Time.
Winstead,
because he actually has been a councillor for ages and he was a professional. So Reform's really going to have to step back and assess if they want to win this. And you're right about Aberdeen. You know, they only picked up 300 or something votes in that. I mean, it could have been their play.
A lot of people saying, actually, probably the most significant by-election yesterday wasn't Makerfield, it was South Aberdeen. Going to talk to John Boothman, the excellent Scottish correspondent for the Times and the Sunday Times, next about that. But let's talk about Restore. I mean, you saw your friend that you interviewed there saying, oh, you know, Restore or Farage and Rupert Lowe should settle their differences, you know, come together. Well, that's not going to happen. It would be nice, but it isn't going to happen. But we discovered, yes, you know, what wouldn't have achieved anything in Makerfield, they'd have lost anyway. If Robert Kenyon got every single one of Rebecca Shepherd's votes, she got 7% of the vote. If he'd have taken that 7%, he'd have still massively lost to Andy Burnham.
It's such a good point, and I think that the Reform spent way too much time fighting its own side, you know, vilifying Restore voters who mostly are just decent people who have been guided by Rupert Lowe into that party and, like the Pied Piper, away from Farage. And I think that you're right. I think it didn't end up splitting the vote. I don't think it's a long-term problem for Nigel, but I do think that it has debased them a little bit. You know, it's really shaken them up, and it's from both sides now. They've got the left coming for them like a carcass, and then they've got Restore kind of coming for those votes that they're losing. Yeah. So I think this is a bit of a reckoning for that party. But yeah, I mean, Restore, they had so much support. Come on, they had the man's richest. The world's richest man behind them, and they still couldn't really even
I gotta say,
get together 3,000 votes.
Yeah, I got to say, you know, if you're a Restore supporter, get on the phone. Let me know what you think about this result. And I've got nothing against Restore. I like Rupert Lowe. He comes on my show, you know, and I've got a lot of time for Rupert. But I think last night's results sort of proved they're just also Rands. They don't really matter. They're going to be a very small factor. And if that's the number of votes they're going to take away from Reform UK, who cares? It's just not... it's nothing... It doesn't matter. By the way, let me know. So, Restore. What happened there? Let me know. If you're a Restore supporter, 03444991000. Reform have got to do better. Restore have got to do better. Am I right? 03444991000. Here you go. This is interesting. Samara, breaking news. Breaking news, folks. Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, has become the first cabinet member to actually stick her head above the parapet and say publicly that Keir Starmer should set out a timetable for his departure after Andy Burnham's by-election win in Makerfield. The Transport Secretary has told the Prime Minister it is time for him to step aside. Significant now, we are expecting both Ed Miliband, the Nut Zero madman secretary, and Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to follow suit. So they're starting to gang up on Starmer. They're trying to get him to see reality and get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, once these cabinet ministers start to go, it's going to be very easy for the backbenchers to follow suit, that's for sure. I mean, I was just down with Andy Burnham and I saw Louise Haigh, who was also there.
Convicted criminal.
Yeah, convicted criminal Louise Haigh. She was taking lots of...
She gets... riddle me this. So Keir Starmer, riddle me this.
Go on.
Such a pompous... Riddle me this. Keir Starmer discovers that his Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh, is a convicted criminal.
Yeah, let's go down memory lane.
And so, to his credit, he immediately said, well, we can't have a convicted criminal as a Secretary of State, one of the great officers of state. I'm sorry, Louise, you're fired. And off she went. It's phone fraud that she was convicted of. Some kind of thing with her mobile phone. She pretended it was stolen or not stolen.
Oh, Labour people don't do that ever.
Yeah.
Pretending phones are stolen.
Yeah. What is it with this Labour lot and their mobile phones? Just don't get phones if you're in a cabinet. If you're anywhere near Keir Starmer, don't get a phone. It'll only land you in trouble. So he learns, oh, she's a convicted criminal, I've got to fire her.
Yeah.
Andy Burnham is going to take over from Keir Starmer, clearly. He's going to put her back into the cabinet. So Starmer fires her because she's a convicted criminal, and Andy Burnham's going to take her back into the cabinet despite the fact she's a convicted criminal. What is that all about?
Hear me out. Hear me out. I think Louise, she was very popular when I
in her own home.
Yeah, in her own home, in her own backyard. But
with hairdressers, because she's always getting like pink hair dye.
She did have pink hair, and I was like, oh my God.
She's still got that.
Yeah, it's so easy to see you in a pack.
Get rid of the pink hair, Louise.
Well,
and your criminal record. See if you can get rid of that as well.
Yeah, but well, maybe when she needs to meet Xi Jinping or something when she's foreign secretary, she might need to get rid of the pink hair. But look, the thing is, maybe that's been Starmer's issue all along. He's too for the process. Even with leaving, he wants to do a process. He should be acting on the conviction of his political prowess. He should not really now be thinking about a legal process. I think that was really the thorn in his side this entire time he's been leading the country. He just wants to go legal with everything. I do agree with you. I mean, what place are we going? But we're talking about Labour here. Which, I mean, it's never going to get that much better.
Yeah, doubtless, you know, Angela Rayner, you know, with her dubious tax payment background, she'll probably be back in the cabinet. I mean, we're going to go...
She'll be Chancellor.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what the hell's going on? Westminster, I mean, it has its own moral code, as in immoral code.
Should we leave this, though, with a clip from a Burnham supporter?
Yeah.
So should we let the people know what they think? So how do you feel about these results today?
Absolutely fantastic. I had a lot of feeling that he was going to walk it. He is an excellent, very excellent gentleman, Andy Burnham. You know, I worked in Manchester for a very, very long time on CCTV, so basically he deserves what he gets. I'll tell you now, if he goes against Keir Starmer, he will walk in. He's upset everybody, especially the pensioners. Basically, he's done nothing. He's turned everything on his back, believe it or not. He's gone against everybody. He really, really has. And this is why the country's turned against Labour. And I don't blame him, really. But this gentleman, if he gets in number 10, he will change everything.
Reform put up quite a fight. What did you think about that?
He hadn't got to smell it.
Yeah, he will change. He's right, our friend from Makerfield there, the view from Makerfield, from the Burnham camp, as it were, there. He says Burnham will get into number 10 and then he will change everything. He's right about that. He's going to make it a lot worse, isn't he?
Can I just say, I mean, I saw Burnham. He was downing a pint about that big. He's been drinking since 4 a.m.
Because, I'll tell you why he's having a pint, because he's a normal bloke. He likes pints and chips and he's a northerner, isn't he?
Look,
Went to Cambridge University, by the way.
He did. It was quite refreshing to see
the beer.
I helped his wife get out of her parking space because it was very tight. And look, you hate all this, I know, but they drove away, him, his kids, his family. I saw them all in their cars driving, you know, really old station wagons and stuff like that. And I do think that people are going to respond to that when you got other leaders going around in private planes across the country and taking £5 million donations and all that. Unfortunately, if you want the working class vote, you've got to be a little bit more authentic. And I think hopefully this is a bit of a wake-up call, because we're not America. We are aspirational in Britain, but we also like to cut people down just like Australia. And I think we need to reassess after this by-election.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Andy Burnham, as you say, he speaks human. He's a likeable guy. You know, I'm being a bit facetious.
Feel the burn.
Likes a pint and all that kind of stuff. So he is a human being. There's no doubt about that. But the trouble is, he's going to make Ed Miliband his Chancellor of the Exchequer, so I'll leave you to ponder that catastrophe. Samara Gill, fantastic stuff from Makerfield. Great to have you in the studio. Next up, we're going to talk to, as I said, John Boothman, the brilliant political correspondent at the Sunday Times and the Times, in fact, in Scotland, about this extraordinary result in South Aberdeen. Another by-election up there. Not often the Tories win by-elections or any election elections in Scotland, the fact that they have done so, I think, spells very bad news for the SNP and also Labour. We'll talk to John next. Stay tuned.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We'll talk to John Boothman from the Sunday Times in just a second. First, a voice note from Darren on Restore versus Reform.
What a farce about this Makerfield by-election. Andy Burnham for Prime Minister. He's Labour. Listen, why don't Rupert, Ben and Nigel form a new party? Rebuild, reform, restore. Think about it. One party. They all want the same thing. Get your heads together.
Look, Darren, you echo the feelings of so many people. If only these people could get together and form a united front, maybe throw the Tories in as well, then we've got a force to reckon with to take on the forces of the left. The trouble is, Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib hate each other. They will never get together. We've got to get used to that. I'm afraid that's the fact. Right, let's go over straight away to the political correspondent for the Sunday Times and the Times up in Scotland, John Boothman. Hi, John.
How you doing, Kevin?
I'm OK. This is sensational, isn't it? South by-election last night, South Aberdeen South. The Tories winning a Westminster by-election in Scotland for the first time in 50 years. I think there are a number of factors here. I think the local people holding the SNP partly responsible for all the job losses in the North Sea. Labour will catch a lot of flack because of that as well. But I think to what extent do you think the kind of sleaze factor involving Nicola Sturgeon and, of course, the now jailed former SNP chief executive Peter Murrell has affected this result? The Peter Murrell syndrome, the Sturgeon syndrome, I think, is very bad news for the SNP, and this result proves it.
Look, I think that set the tone and the background and the context, really, for what happened today. But you're absolutely right. I mean, entirely seismic result. I've run out of superlatives to talk about it. The Conservatives themselves could hardly believe they had won by so much. Both the SNP and the Conservatives have been saying for the last few weeks that it's very tight. But, you know, at the end of the day, the Tories won 49% of the vote. And it was interesting today. I think a lot of it goes down to Kemi Badenoch. She's been up here 3 times during the campaign. She said today, you were talking about Makerfield, that Makerfield is all about one man's job, but Aberdeen South's about thousands of jobs.
Yes.
57,000 jobs have been lost in oil and gas. And, you know, that was really the big story of this by-election. They're a bit of a plague on both the houses of the Labour government because of the net zero direction they go in, and they're not in favour of drilling. The same with the SNP. People in the north east of Scotland are well fed up with the SNP and oil and gas. Nicola Sturgeon took them down the net zero road just when he's tried to row them back a wee bit, but he's only a wee bit in favour of oil and gas, and the population and the voters decided it wasn't good enough.
Absolutely. Let's have a little listen to Kemi hailing this remarkable result.
Right now, we have a problem with national security. The Defence Secretary has resigned. Energy security is part of our national security, and Aberdeen is absolutely critical for energy security. We need to drill our own oil and gas in the North Sea, rather than import it from Norway, who are drilling in the same North Sea, or worse, from Russia, which is something that is happening right now. I think it is absolutely critical that we show that we care about national security, we care about energy, and we care about the defence of our country, and of course, people's jobs.
A lot of talk today, John, that actually the very significant by-election yesterday was not Makerfield, it was Aberdeen South. Because what I think this means, I think that there's a lot of disaffection now in Scotland for the SNP, and Peter Murrell has probably banged one of the final nails in the coffin. But also, this result, as you say, 57,000 jobs basically because of old lunatic Ed Miliband's mad net zero policies, jobs being lost in the North Sea, left, right and centre. This spells a very bad future for Labour, because Labour would have been hoping for, as the SNP declines, they would have cashed in and gone back to the old system where Labour basically controlled Scotland. But this is proving that Labour can't buy a thrill up there either. They've got a grim future as well because of this net zero stuff.
Well, you have to just look at the numbers. In 2024 at the general election, in this seat and in the Arbroath and Broughty Ferry seat where there was a by-election, Labour came in both of these seats. They came second. They came fourth in both of these seats last night. Again, that's what's so remarkable about the Tory thumping victory. The Tories only, 5 or 6 weeks ago, came fifth in the Scottish election. Fifth, their worst ever result since devolution, and they've leapfrogged the Labour Party. They have left Reform, who certainly the Tories were concerned about. They've won votes back from Reform in Aberdeen South, and they've won, as I said, with this thumping great majority. And again, you have to give credit to Kemi Badenoch for that. She's building not just credibility in the north east of Scotland, but I think on a wider basis. I was at a focus group in the constituency the night before last, and, you know, people had a lot of good things to say about Kemi Badenoch, that she was clear, she had a direct message, and somehow or other she's managed to put, you know, those years behind before 2024 and the poor showing of the Conservatives behind her.
Yeah, I think that this result could mean that Scotland politically is at the crossroads. Very interesting. Now, while I've got you, John, your paper, The Times, I'm going to bring you south of the border politically, if you don't mind. Your paper, The Times, this is breaking news, is saying that Sir Keir Starmer finally will weigh up his future over the weekend amid mounting pressure from his cabinet in the wake of Andy Burnham's by-election victory in Makerfield. So far, he's insisted, the Prime Minister, that he will not walk away and he'll fight in any leadership challenge and so on and so forth. But privately, according to The Times, sources close to the PM said he recognises there is growing pressure from the backbenchers for him to go, and he he is expected to take the weekend with his wife and family to consider his position before deciding whether to fight on. I think that's extremely significant.
Sure. Look, I think there's an inevitability about this. You know, nobody, I suspect, in the Labour benches could have done what Burnham did last night. A massive, great majority, again, putting Nigel Farage and Reform to a certain degree back in a box. You know, Nigel Farage and Reform didn't lose because of Restore last night. What happened was that Burnham got a huge, huge majority, and no one else in the Labour benches could have done that. And I think what you're going to get, and it started happening already, is a procession of cabinet and other ministers chapping Starmer's door and saying, look, you need to go, and they would rather have an orderly transition to a new leader, most of them, rather than have a divisive contest that's going to last for many months, probably right up to September, and I suspect that's where the pressure's coming from all over the entire weekend.
Yeah, and in terms of Starmer, we know that, Heidi Alexander, the new Transport Secretary, is the first Cabinet Secretary to put her head above the parapet and publicly say that the Prime Minister should set out a timetable for his departure. But we also know that Ed Miliband and Shabana Mahmood have told him privately that they should do that. And there's even talk that if he doesn't, Ed Miliband in particular might resign next week. I spoke to Trevor Kavanagh, the veteran political commentator for the Sun newspaper at the beginning of the show, and he said, I would say that by Monday we're going to get very, very frantic activity around number 10 Downing Street. Next week is going to be interesting, isn't it?
Look, serious and senior people are now out there. The story about, you know, if Shabana Mahmood, very senior minister and the Home Secretary, if the Net Zero Secretary Miliband is already out there, you're talking about serious people, not just from any particular wing of the Labour Party, but, you know, on the left and on the right, are actually putting pressure under Starmer. He's in grave, grave difficulty. I suspect the thing that's holding a lot of this up is that, you know, he will be getting some advice, principally from people who are backroom people who surround him, whose jobs are dependent on Starmer staying in post, who might be saying he needs to stay. But I think the wider group of MPs and the wider group of ministers, I think after last night's result, just realise that the game is up.
Yeah, I think the manoeuvres now in high places in the Labour Party, in the Cabinet, is what can I do to make sure that Andy gives me a job, because Starmer's going to go and I might lose my job. So the whole dynamic is changing. But fascinating result in Aberdeen South, and great to talk to you about it, John. That's John Boothman, the brilliant political correspondent for the Sunday Times and the Times up in Scotland. As I say, make no mistake, that Aberdeen South result is an extremely significant milestone in Scottish politics, because I think it spells potentially the beginning of the end for the SNP. As the SNP was crumbling, disintegrating because of Sturgeon's hopelessness and her corrupt husband, her insistence she wasn't involved, but nobody believes her. So the SNP was crumbling because of that sleaze, because of their stupid left-wing woke policies. It was disintegrating. Labour thought, right, we can go back to the status quo like it used to be, when Labour used to pretty much be guaranteed to win all of Scotland, nearly all of Scotland, every single election. Labour thinking, well, we can get, but because of crazy Ed Miliband, because he's lost 57,000 jobs for Scottish people up in the North Sea, Labour aren't going to get those constituencies. Is it possible that Scotland could go blue, could go Tory? If you look at that result in Aberdeen South, it is extraordinary. 03444991000. Next up, we're going to talk to Jonathan Sakadotti, journalist and broadcaster, about the Memorandum of Understanding. Donald Trump's fabulous peace deal, 60 days, it's off. The peace talks in Switzerland are off. The Memorandum of Understanding turned into a Memorandum of Misunderstanding in about 24 hours flat. We'll talk to Jonathan about this latest debacle next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, let's go over to Jonathan Sakadotti, journalist and broadcaster. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hi there.
Good to have you on the show. Now, yesterday I had Jake Wallace-Simons on the show, and we discussed, you know, this marvellous Memorandum of Understanding, you know, the new Treaty of Versailles, as Donald Trump theatrically, you know, that long signature of his that takes about 20 minutes to complete, you know, the peace in our times. I said to Jake, we'll play this in a little while so I can blow my own trumpet. I said, I reckon this peace in our times will last about 48 hours. I was wrong. It lasted less than 24 hours. Your thoughts, basically, about America? I mean, I'm a fan of Donald Trump, don't get me wrong, and I have no problem with the idea of putting Iran in its place. I like the idea of telling those mad mullahs, you can't do what you've been doing. You cannot sponsor terrorism all over the country, all over the world, and we're going to teach you a lesson. The trouble is the Americans didn't really seem to have any kind of plan. They didn't think about the Strait of Hormuz. It was pretty chaotic. And now, so I like the initiative. I like the idea, but the outcome, let's face it, is disastrous. Trump now desperately trying to get out of this war because he's got the midterms coming up. He rushes through this agreement with Iran without even talking to Israel. Right, the part of the deal is Israel can't bomb Lebanon, Hezbollah can't attack Israel. That's the deal. It didn't even talk to either side of them. Before I get your response, let me blow my own trumpet and play what I said to Jake Wallace-Simon yesterday. What's your gut instinct, Jake? My feeling is that Hezbollah will probably want to keep hostilities going, and Israel, to its credit, is not going to put up with that. I don't think that this promise on the part of Donald Trump that Hezbollah and Israel will stop hostilities will last more than a couple of days. Yeah, well, as I say, I was wrong. It lasted one day. There is now, they're now talking about, America's announced, oh, there is now another ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, or Lebanon, if you like. But this is just desperate stuff, isn't it? And you can't have a country like America telling a sovereign state like Israel, oh, by the way, you're part of my deal. I've agreed that you won't do this, you won't do that. If Israel is attacked, it will respond. This is ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, this is all very confusing, and I think that's often how Trump likes it, but I would say that even for those of us who have urged caution in judging him for previous apparently crazy ideas and crazy statements until we see what happens, even for us, this seems to be over the line and over the mark. And it's been seen that way in Israel as well. I think there's an enormous amount of depression and hand-wringing in Israel from, ordinary citizens all the way up to the top, because I think there's a sense that Trump has capitulated. Trump himself has admitted that he stopped the war because of the Strait of Hormuz oil shock. He's essentially saying that America was economically defeated. And the deal gives Iran massive financial relief before any substantive concessions are made or verified.
$300 billion. $300 billion.
Exactly. I mean, there's the $300 billion, then there's the freed assets.
They've lifted all sanctions, all economic sanctions. Iran can now rebuild for all it's worth. This is, I said this to Jake yesterday. What the hell is the point of bombing the crap out of Iran for months on end and then giving it $300 billion to repair the damage?
Well, that's right. I mean, the $300 billion, there's also oil revenues, freed assets that will flow directly into Hezbollah, Houthi and Hamas funding, those proxies of Iran that have been, making that ring of fire around Israel, all of them degraded, but none of them removed. And this will help them to rebuild, especially as Trump then also capitulated in trying to tie what Israel's action in Lebanon to this deal, so saying that Israel can't continue to defend against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then they can funnel money that way from Iran because there'll be more money pouring in. And just think about the poor Iranian people as well. Trump promised them help is coming. They went out onto the streets at the beginning of this. They were slaughtered, massacred in large numbers. Those people now apparently feel also completely deserted by America, because if the money pours back in, that we all know what happens there. It means that the regime gets tougher. It gets tougher on protests. It seems like this is a capitulation, but I do want to say there is a but. One never knows with Trump. And I'm not saying this because I necessarily think it's what is happening, but I just think we should reserve this possibility in the back of our mind that Trump deals with chaos, confusion and distraction every single time. A lot of what Trump says, he doesn't mean. A lot of what Trump says, he doesn't do. Sometimes people put that down to craziness or his erratic behavior. Sometimes it looks like strategy. Because he gets used over and over again, the problem with that policy is that every time you do it, you have to do a better job of convincing people that what you've said and what you're doing is actually real. Well, there is a vague hope, perhaps, that this is an example of that he's had to turn the volume up. He's had to insult Israel more. Him and J.D. Vance making these very harsh statements about Israel's actions, then perhaps giving the Iranians something. Maybe there is something that's going to happen, or maybe we should just be watching what is actually going on, despite what everybody says. So those talks haven't actually started. The money hasn't actually been released. The Strait of Hormuz is actually open, I believe, without tariffs being paid for traffic going through it. So it's very tricky to hold that line, because the more crazy, the more unhinged, the more of a U-turn this all looks like, the harder it is for anyone to really say. But the truth is, a good analyst will tell you, especially in Middle East affairs, if not all geopolitics, we don't actually know anything of what's going on behind the scenes, and it makes it very hard for us to predict. So I would say the best analysts will say, let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, but we do know J.D. Vance was supposed to start these peace talks in Switzerland on Monday. Earlier it was said they're cancelled. Now it's a little bit more diplomatic. They've been postponed, so that isn't good news. And I do think ticking around in the background is Trump is just desperate to get out of this, because he's got the midterms coming up and this war is not popular in America. That's what I think is going on, and he's trying to sort of take Israel for granted. This memorandum of agreement that America and Iran sealed had 14 points. That's supposed to go on for 60 days. It just sort of said, oh yeah, well in this, Israel and Hezbollah will agree to cease all hostilities. Now you know what that's like. That means Hezbollah will take that as a good idea to fire a few missiles at Israel. Israel will quite rightly respond. It's exactly what has happened. This memorandum of agreement left Netanyahu with two choices. He either agreed to meekly comply, for Israel to meekly comply with America's orders, or he defies what Trump wants and acts like a sovereign state, and if he's attacked by Hezbollah, he attacks the hell back. He took the second option and always will, I think, Jonathan.
Well, listen, that is the job of a leader of any country, and Benjamin Netanyahu, like him or loathe him, is relatively robust, I would say, with his responsibilities as a leader, but also he was considered the sort of Trump whisperer. In fact, he was also considered even somebody who knew how to deal with more hostile presidents of the US, like Obama and at times Biden. So this is potentially damaging for his reputation internally, but also potentially beneficial, because if he can now show that he will stand up to Trump, that might help him in those upcoming elections. But really what's underlying all this that's making this very hard for most of us to understand are the contradictions and confusion. Iran and Israel are describing entirely different versions of what the MOU says. Iran claims that it includes phased Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon over 60 days. Israel says no such commitment exists. It's not been asked to leave. US officials have reportedly told Israel its right to respond to threats remains intact, but Iran then cancelled the Switzerland talks, now postponed, citing those Israeli strikes. The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah was announced today, this afternoon, but both sides have been trading fire all morning, and so the IDF has still been carrying out action there. There have been the deaths of 4 IDF soldiers and 47 Lebanese casualties overnight. Doesn't look much like a ceasefire, and Khamenei publicly said he approved the deal despite a different view, and that Trump acted out of desperation, while Trump claimed on Truth Social that Iran did and that they're finished. So it's all extremely confusing. And then, as you say, to top it all off, J.D. Vance was meant to lead the Swiss technical talks. He pulled out, and the White House said there are logistic problems, and it's not simple or predictable. So this is all as clear as mud. But I think that lack of clarity is giving a lot of people a lot of cause for concern. And so, in a sense, the chaos itself is just as damaging as perhaps some of the terms that have been, said by both sides to be agreed.
I'll tell you what, Jonathan, we're talking about the fog of war, but I do think this is not America's finest hour. Trump's desperate, I think. Yeah, we will follow developments very, very keenly. Good to talk to you, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Jonathan Sakadotti, journalist and broadcaster. I mean, what do you reckon of all this? I mean, America's it's just desperate, isn't it? Oh, the war's over. No, it's not. 03444991000. And next up, we're going to speak to the deputy sports correspondent at The Sun, Dan King. World Cup fever, of course. That next. Scotland are playing tonight, I think. Let's talk to Dan in just a moment. Stay where you are.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go over to the air conditioning capital of the world, Houston, Texas, where we're going to speak to the Sun's fabulous Dan King. Hi, Dan.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm all right. Can you settle an argument? Is your job title Deputy Sports Correspondent?
It is, yeah, and Chelsea correspondent as well. I'm a man who wears many hats.
Yeah, I couldn't quite work out what the Deputy Sports Correspondent is. There a sports correspondent then who's your boss?
There is, yes. The chief sports correspondent, Mr. Martin Lipton.
OK, got it. OK. Yeah. That's sorted that out. I want to talk to you about the Premier League first week fixtures because you're the Chelsea correspondent, aren't you? Yeah. And my team, Fulham, have got Chelsea at home. That'll be quite a season opener. But first of all, we must talk about the World Cup. Let's talk about Scotland tonight, 11 p.m. kickoff here. Scotland versus Morocco. Where is that happening, Dan?
Where is that happening? That is happening in. You'll have to. You caught me there because I'm in Houston, so that is happening in Boston.
Boston, I'm told. Yeah, that's right, Boston.
Boston. They've taken over, haven't they?
Yeah,
the Army.
Yeah, that's right. They Scotland. It's now Muck Boston. It's called. Your thoughts on that match? Morocco, very strong team. I mean, Scotland got their work cut out. It was easy enough to beat Haiti. Morocco, not so easy, I'd suggest.
No, well, to be honest, Scotland didn't make it very easy to beat Haiti either. It was pretty tense in the final minutes, but they got the job done, and that's given them a good step towards their aim, which has to be trying to reach the knockout stages. But yes, it's a very tall order. They've got to play Morocco and then they've got to play Brazil. They've probably got to get at least 1 point out of those games to be one of the best third place teams. And Morocco, as they showed particularly in that first half against Brazil, are good. And let's face it, they showed it 4 years ago when they reached the semi-finals of the World Cup. They're not a team to be taken lightly at all. And I think it's going to be a very, very tough game for Scotland.
But such are the mathematics of this sprawling tournament. I think they're playing something like 76 games just to eliminate 15 teams in the first round. Scotland, even if they lose their remaining first round matches, they could still go through on the fact they've won one game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's entirely possible that 3 points will be enough to get through from a group, and then it will come down to goal difference. And having only scored one against Haiti, Scotland are up against it in that sense. So I think their best chance of getting through is to get a point, or at least against Morocco today, and that will see them through.
My mate from your paper, the brilliant TV critic, Ali Ross, is over there with Scotland. He said to me the other day, "Yeah, I'm off to watch Scotland with the World Cup. I'll be back after the first round."
Well, they have been every time before, so bitter experience teaches you that.
Exactly right. Another game tonight that's interesting. We've got Brazil start off tomorrow at 1:30 a.m. But tonight it's at 8 p.m. Australia versus USA. America looked very strong, didn't they, in their first match?
Yeah, it was. I mean, all the hosts, all the co-hosts have started really well and on track to reach the knockouts, which overall is a good thing for the tournament, I think, all the time, because you want to generate local enthusiasm. It was quite funny actually last night here in Houston. There were, by all accounts, there were more Mexicans down in the fan zone here watching the Mexico game than there had been for the USA game the other day. But because it's a 2:00 my time kickoff for the States against Australia, I'd expect that to be packed out today in Houston. And again, it's a really interesting game because Australia, I think, surprised everybody apart from themselves by beating Turkey in their first game. And in many ways, a draw in this game would be okay for both, and that would probably be enough to see them through. But I think on the basis of those opening games, I think the USA will go in there with a lot of confidence, and I can see them just sneaking a win and thereby joining Mexico in the last 32.
And Mexico, of course, looking very, very strong. What about England? They're playing Ghana next Tuesday at 9 p.m. An easier opponent, I would suggest, than Croatia. We've been over this ground a lot, but that game a couple of nights ago against Croatia, pretty lousy first half. They came out a transformed team. I've been speaking to Sean Costas, your various other colleagues on The Sun, and we've all agreed that if England play like they did in the second half against Croatia, they will be serious contenders in this competition.
Yeah, and absolutely, as they should be, as one of the top 4 seeds. You know, this is what they should be producing. I think the thing with Croatia, and I think I said this to you before when we spoke last week before the game, Croatia's aging team, I just felt with the youth of England's forwards that, you know, they would pose a real test to Modric and co, and also, as we saw with the kind of bold substitutions which Thomas Tuchel made. I mean, the 3 players he brought on late in the second half, and 2 of them, Saka and Rashford, combining for the goal that, let's face it, England thoroughly deserved for their domination of that second half. It's very interesting. The thing about the game against Ghana is Ghana are a very hard team to break down, and they ground out a 1-0 win in probably the worst game of the World Cup so far last week. So I think in some ways they could be harder to break down than
that's interesting
than Croatia were. I think, you know, obviously Livakovic.
I mean, they're no mugs, are they, Ghana? They're no mugs.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they're not the same team as they were back in the day when they were reaching quarterfinals of World Cups, and you might remember being famously denied in a game against Uruguay where naughty Luis Suarez was handballing on the line. They don't have the caliber of player that they had then, but they are well organised, and they are, you know, under Carlos Queiroz, the former the former Manchester United assistant manager, and they are, you know, they will be hard to beat, and as I say, in many ways could be a harder nut to crack than Croatia were.
Indeed. Let's just a quick word. We've got to go fairly soon, Dan, but a quick word on the opening matches of the Premier League season. A baptism of fire for Coventry. They're away to Arsenal. Good luck with that. And also Hull, newcomers Hull. They're at home to Man United. Again, good luck with that. Ipswich Town, the other promoted team, they've got Sunderland at home, so they might feel a little bit better about that. But you're the Chelsea correspondent. My team, Fulham at home, 25th of August, 8 o'clock at night. Great. Fulham, Chelsea, I mean, God knows what kind of team we're going to have. God knows what manager we're going to have. That doesn't look good. How are Chelsea looking?
Well, Chelsea have made a big sale already in Marc Cucurella, and it's now going to be interesting to see who they bring in. They have the bosses have promised they're going to bring in players who are ready-made, not young players who need improving. And it's a question of whether are they going to directly replace Cucurella? Where are these reinforcements, these ready-made players going to come in? I think they've got some interesting work to do this summer, and because they have no European football, although you've got the pull of living in London, although you've got the pull of Xabi Alonso as the new manager, if you can't offer Champions League football, what calibre of footballer are you going to be able to attract? I think the other really juicy fixture of that weekend is on the Sunday at St James's Park. If you remember last season, obviously there's a long saga where Liverpool bought Alexander Isak and he didn't get to play against them because of injury. But this time he's there. Yeah, and Liverpool have just hijacked another Newcastle deal for this for Victor Munoz. So I think it's, get some popcorn in and watch the...
Newcastle got a lot of scores to settle. Yeah, interesting stuff. Dan, really good to talk to you. Come on again soon. Enjoy the World Cup. Dan King there, Deputy Sports Correspondent at The Sun newspaper. Don't forget you can find out all about the World Cup. They've got a great website, The Sun Sports Department, with all the World Cup news and all the programmes. We're going to talk next about all the big stories. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the final hour of a sizzling edition of Drive Time. Seriously, we are in the slipstream of that incredible by-election in Makerfield yesterday. Good result for Andy Burnham, no doubt about it. Good result for Labour. A bad result for Keir Starmer. And let's face it, not a very good result for Reform UK. So lots to talk about there. In a little while, I'll be talking to Graham Stringer, the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South. A man who speaks his own mind, so it'll be interesting to find out what his take is about the by-election and all its ramifications. Cabinet ministers now, we understand, almost queuing up to tell Keir Starmer to sling his hook. And it looks like the Prime Minister is finally seeing reality, and apparently he's going to spend the weekend. The Times is reporting he's going to spend the weekend with his family weighing up his future. So it's like, Keir Starmer, reality, I don't believe you've met. Now get used to it. So he's insisted that he will not walk away, and if there is a leadership challenge to him, he will fight. He will fight his corner. He will stand in that leadership election. Well, it looks as if now he may be finally accepting it's not worth it. He recognises apparently there is growing pressure from the backbenchers for him to go, but also from the cabinet. Keep saying Louise Haigh. No, Heidi Alexander, who is the Transport Secretary who took over from Louise Haigh, who was, of course, fired from that job because it turned out she was a convicted criminal. Andy Burnham's going to bring her back. That's great, isn't it? Anyway, Heidi Alexander is the first Cabinet Secretary to put her name to a call for Keir Starmer to get the hell out of Dodge. But we understand privately Ed Miliband, Shabana Mahmood and possibly more are all saying, come on, Keir, come in, Keir, your time is up. Let's talk to former Labour MP, Reform UK now, Simon Danczuk. Welcome, Simon.
Good to be with you, Kevin.
Always a pleasure. Now, we've got to be honest about what happened in Makerfield. Look, Burnham won comfortably. Let's forget about the Restore factor. Oh, Restore are going to take all the votes away from Reform. Well, they got 7% of the votes. If Robert Kenyon, the Reform candidate, had taken was gifted every single one of Rebecca Shepherd, the Restore Britain candidate's votes, he still would have comprehensively lost to Andy Burnham. Now, Andy Burnham got a lot of votes for various reasons. One, Makerfield's a dyed-in-the-wall Labour constituency. Not enough has been made of that. That it was always a challenge for Reform UK to overturn, decades. The history of Makerfield is just red. It's a Labour constituency. So that was always a challenge. Also, those people in Makerfield have been given this extraordinary choice, this extraordinary option. Vote Labour, vote for the Labour man, Andy Burnham, in order to get rid of the Labour Prime Minister, a proposition that an electorate must never have ever received before. Extraordinary, unique. So that he got a lot of votes for that reason as well. So he had a lot of things going for him. Nevertheless, the margin of his victory was I think surprising, quite triumphant for him, and really bad news for Reform. What I would say is that and I don't want to come down too hard on Robert Kenyon, but he's a plumber, he's a plucky amateur, he was a terrible candidate, and we barely saw him. I don't think he was ever on Talk. Which is extraordinary. I don't think he was on GB News either. So he was like the invisible candidate. Very bad candidate, appalling campaign by Reform. They've got to raise their game, Simon.
Well, I agree with some of your analysis, a lot of your analysis there, Kevin. It's fair to say that Burnham is said to be Labour's best parliamentary candidate, isn't he? That's why they're bringing him back, and it's a fairly low bar, I have to say. But he's said to be their best person in Labour, and so it's hardly surprising that he wins a safe Labour seat, is it? And I agree with your point. This is dyed in the wool, as you put it, and that's the phrase I would use. Dyed in the wool Labour territory, and I went campaigning up there. Me and my wife went campaigning for a day, and I saw a lot of older people who were just staunch Labour. They were supporting Burnham. They had his posters in the window. So elderly people who've always been Labour, and they weren't going to change from that. So he had that advantage there. There's no doubt about it. And he isn't a bad communicator. I'm no fan of it.
He speaks human, doesn't he? He speaks
human, which is not something you can associate with Keir Starmer. So he has that going for him. And then the final point which you make, you know, if you want rid of Starmer, which everybody does, then vote Burnham. And it was quite an extraordinary, unique situation. So on that basis, I'm not surprised that he won the seat, to be quite honest. I agree with some of what you're saying about reform. I think they had an okay showing. I've just been putting that on social media on X, saying that I thought the result was okay for them. Rob Kenyon is a lovely guy. I met him when I was up there, but was he the right person to fight this parliamentary seat? He probably wasn't. Now, the good news is I think Reform will learn. They're a very young party.
Yeah, I know. They've achieved amazing things in a very short space of time. Don't get me wrong, but this was a low point, I think.
Well, you know what action I think they're already taking, which is preparing parliamentary candidates.
Yes.
They don't have lots of people in the wings like Labour or the Conservatives or the Liberal Democrats do, who've been councillors for many years or trade union activists or whatever else that they can call upon. So they really need to train and organise and vet their candidates who they can draw upon for by-elections like this. And so that's been a weakness for them. As regards campaigning, personally, and this is very unpopular for people in politics to say this, but it's the truth, I would have campaigned more negatively against Burnham. They put out a couple of attack videos against him, which I thought were very good, but I don't think they did enough in terms of drawing to attention the weaknesses that Burnham has. And I think in a by-election, that's crucially important. People say they don't like negative campaigning, but the truth is it has a really big impact on the result. And I would have done more of that. If I'd have been advising them, I would have done more of that.
I think that's what, it's far be it from me to offer Mr Farage and Reform UK advice, but I think that what you just said, that's what they've got to concentrate on. They have to start finding better candidates and perhaps thinking about it a bit more. Matt Goodwin in Gorton and Denton, I'm a great admirer of Matt Goodwin, a very brilliant man. However, you know, an academic Southern professor, you know, in a solid working class constituency like Gorton and Denton. I mean, you know, it was a challenge for him, put it that way. I don't think he was the right man for that job. And I think Rob Kenyon, I think they were too blinded by the success of the plumber, Hannah Spencer, in Gorton and Denton. They said, let's get ourselves a local plumber. They always win. Well, apparently not. So I think if I was to give any advice to Reform UK, and if they cared a jot about my advice, it would be start thinking about your candidates a lot more and prepare them properly. I mean, you know, and by the way, Simon, vet them as well. I mean, this social media background, this one post in particular about women getting abortions so they can screw around, I mean, that was sort of dynamite, wasn't it? He was a bit doomed from that moment. And all due respect to Reform, they should have discovered that first. So more vetting and much more carefulness about preparing candidates. Am I right?
Well, I suspect that they had vetted him to an extent and knew some of what he said, and I think they thought they could ride it out, you know, as Donald Trump does in the United States. But this isn't the United States, is it? And the British public, you know, don't take lightly to some of the types of comments that Rob had made many.
Well, women don't, Simon. I think that is a problem with Reform. They're seen as a blokey party, and we do know that they do have a woman problem. That female support for Reform UK is, shall we say, not that impressive. And Rob Kenyon's social media background didn't help that at all.
No, I think it turned some voters off. What some polling suggests, and some focus group work that was done during the by-election, suggests that if he'd apologised, explicitly apologised for what he'd said, then they would have been more sympathetic to him. But he never really came out, and obviously he was being advised, but he never really came out and apologised clearly for it. So I think that was a mistake as well. But you're right, they need a range of parliamentary candidates, don't they?
Yes.
More women coming forward. You know, I mean, Sarah Porchin is a breath of fresh air in my view, but more people like Sarah I think would be great for Reform.
Yourself?
Oh, well, I was an early adopter. I went to Reform in February 2024, before many of the Conservatives did and before Nigel was leader. So I've done my stint, and I can't imagine that I'll stand again in a parliamentary election.
Okay.
Never say never, but you never know. But I think they are getting... Positively, I think they're getting stuff in place to be able to do better than what they've been doing in these by-elections. I remember they had a great local elections results in May this year. That were fantastic. So they'll build on it, I've no doubt.
Yeah, all those factors taken on board that Makerfield is dyed-in-the-wool Labour. As I said, you know what those northern Labour constituencies are like. There are a load of Labour voters who would vote for a spaniel if it had a red rosette on it. You know what I mean? So it was stacked against Reform, but as they say, I think there are lessons to be learned, and they need to learn them. Let's talk, shall we, about the winner, Andy Burnham. Let's have a quick look at his victory speech.
But I do say to my own party, this is a final chance to change. This is what people said directly to me on the hundreds of doorsteps that I stood on. We must hear it, we must act upon it, and we must get it right. There will be no second chance. But it is a chance now, from this result tonight, to build a new politics based on unity and hope, turning away from the path that takes us to a divided, dark politics of the kind we see in the United States. We must now take this path and put this country back on the right path and bring people back together and get things working properly again.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Simon, for God's sake, let's not have decisive leadership like Donald Trump provides America. We mustn't have that. Mustn't have that. Now, Andy Burnham, as we just said, he's a likeable guy. He talks human. There's no doubt about that. That'll be a refreshing change from Keir Starmer. But who's his best mate? His balmy best mate is Ed Miliband. He will potentially make Ed Miliband Chancellor of the Exchequer, which doesn't bear thinking about. We know he's going to bring back extremely left-wing convicted criminal Louise Haigh, who was fired from the cabinet because it turned out she had a criminal conviction. She's going to come back. He's going to lurch to the left. He says he doesn't believe trickle-down economics works. It does work. He's going to nationalise everything, left, right and centre. We're going to get a very, very far left Prime Minister, and I suspect, you know, if for example, he brings in Ed Miliband as Chancellor, I don't think his premiership will last long at all. The city and the markets won't have it. So difficult times ahead for him and the nation, I would suggest.
Yeah, the good news is that it looks like Keir Starmer's going to depart, and you and I have been predicting that for several weeks, haven't we? So that is now coming to fruition. The bad news is it looks like Andy Burnham's going to take over from him. And mark my words, it'll be a disaster, not just for the country, but for the Labour Party as well. This is you know, the party rejected him on 2 previous occasions to be leader of the party. And he doesn't stand for anything. That's the reality of it. He has no vision, just like Starmer, no vision. Yes, he's a better communicator, but no vision, flip-flops, very indecisive. Some of that's like Starmer again. So it's Starmer Mark II, isn't it? And I mean, the good news is that we might go to a general election. He might, you know, take over in September at Labour conference, and then by May next year, he might think, well, the honeymoon is going to end very soon. I'll go to the country.
The Burnham bounce, they're calling it. But here's what I don't think he's going to call this idea. He's going to get into number 10 Downing Street and call a snap election to consolidate his leadership. No, he's not, because he knows he might lose it. So I don't think that is going to happen. And he's going to start bringing in all these lunatic left-wingers. And in terms of a general election, if he makes Crazy Ed the Chancellor of the Exchequer, then I think the markets and the city will react in a similar way pretty damn quickly to the way they reacted when Liz Truss started trying to frighten the horses. You know, so I think that if Miliband gets going, they could be forced into a general election pretty soon because of the catastrophe they're going to make of our economy.
No, that wouldn't surprise me, actually. I think who he picks and puts in various places will be very interesting. But you know, he doesn't want to even to take over until September. His team has said that they want time. He wants it every which way, doesn't he? You know, it might be that Starmer this weekend, thinking about it, just decides to resign. That's quite possible. And you know, and then all hell breaks loose, and then they have to have a competition. Will Wes Streeting throw his hat in the ring? Will it be a coronation for Burnham? Whilst all this is going on, it's like student politics, isn't it?
Yes,
While
exactly.
all this is going on,
yeah.
The country's in such a mess. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, I agree with you, Simon. We keep hearing lots of Labour politics. Oh, you know, very unhealthy for a coronation. He shouldn't just be allowed to take over. Well, I understand the basis of that line of thinking. But, you know, the country, I mean, for the sake of the country and a kind of semblance of stability, I hope he is crowned. I hope he does get a coronation, because the nation doesn't want 3 months over the summer of these idiots squabbling like rats in a sack and having some sort of stupid election, you know, that Burnham's probably going to win anyway. You know, just give him the damn job. Let's not mess around with a coronation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, well, that is interesting, isn't it? At least it would help create some stability. But I can't see Starmer just handing this to Burnham. You know, it's such a mess, isn't it? He will fight it. I mean, at this moment in time, Starmer's still saying he will fight any leadership campaign election. I mean, anything could happen from this point on. But if I were putting money on it, I think Burnham's going to ultimately end up becoming Labour Prime Minister, taking over from Starmer. But it's not good for Britain, and it's not what the British people will want. His remedies, his agenda, is not what Britain needs. It's a very niche left-wing view of what the solutions are.
Yeah, as I say, he said trickle-down economics doesn't work. Yeah, a point of order there, Andy. It does. This is what these socialists think, you know. Oh, you know, if you have rich people running businesses, employing thousands of people, that doesn't work. I think it does, actually. Simon, fantastic to talk to you. Have a great weekend. Come on again soon. That's Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP, now Reform UK. Right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South up there in Manchester, Graham Stringer. Regular viewers to the show will know that Graham speaks his own mind, and it's always good to talk to him. I'll be fascinated to see what he thinks about Makerfield. That next. Stick around.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership and a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Breaking news, very serious news. Two trains have collided near Bedford in Bedfordshire, just north of London, reportedly resulting in serious injuries to those on board. Videos from the scene taken by passengers show what appear to be two East Midlands trains services that have run into one another. Apparently some of their high-speed trains, and some of those videos apparently are rather distressing. We don't know any more details, but when two trains collide, it tends to be very, very serious. We'll get right onto that and see if we can bring you any more details. So two trains, major train crashes near Bedford, just to the north of London. High-speed trains from the East Midlands trains services will keep you up to speed with that developing shock story. In the meantime, while we try and get details on that, let's go back to the Makerfield by-election and all its ramifications. And let's talk to our friend, the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South, Graham Stringer. Welcome, Graham.
Good evening.
Well, first of all, the word is now, let's talk about Keir Starmer. This is the Times is now reporting that finally, Keir Starmer is going to spend the weekend weighing up his future. He's going to spend the weekend with his family amid mounting pressure, which, of course, has reached fever point after Andy Burnham's victory in Makerfield. The Prime Minister's insisted that he will not walk away, but privately, according to the Times, Keir Starmer said he recognises there is growing pressure from the backbenches for him to go, and he's expected to spend the weekend with his wife and family, considering his position before deciding whether to fight on. Now, the pressure from the backbenches is also added to by pressure now from Cabinet secretaries. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, has put her head above the parapet, and she said she's got to think about going. And we know that privately, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and the Net Zero Secretary, Ed Miliband, have also urged him to lay out his departure route, as it were. I mean, he's got to go. Do you think it might happen maybe as early as next week? I spoke to Trevor Kavanagh from The Sun at the beginning of the show. He said he thought we might see some action as early as Monday. What's your thought?
I think the sensible thing for Keir, so he retains at least some dignity, is to lay out a timetable. In that, he needs to know who else is standing, really. I mean, he could hand over to the Deputy Prime Minister, but I think the sensible thing to do is just to announce that he won't stand and fit into that timetable.
Yes, indeed. Let's move over to Makerfield. A stunning victory for Andy Burnham. A lot of factors involved, I'm sure you would agree. It wasn't just vote for lovely Andy and Labour. That's great. You know, the good people of Makerfield were given the extraordinary proposition, vote Labour to get rid of the Labour Prime Minister. So a lot of people, I think, voted for Andy for that reason. But also, you'll know this, of course, Graham, you're from that part of the world. Makerfield's dyed in the wool Labour. That said, it was a pretty bad night for Reform UK, wasn't it? Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it looks a stunning victory if you compare it to the last two, the outing the local elections and the general election. If you take a longer look, as you say, Makerfield has been Labour for a century. or so. That vote is in line with most of those results and a number of other so-called safe Labour seats that were considered to be safe for a long time, where the vote when things were bad for Labour was around what Andy got this time, and when it was better for Labour went up to 65 or 70% of the vote. So what Andy's done is re-establish the coalition around the Labour Party for a number of reasons. Some people will have been voting to keep out reform. Some people, rather bizarrely, will have been voting Labour to get rid of a Labour Prime Minister. So I think that's what's happened. Most of the detailed analysis shows there was very little switch back from reform to the Labour Party or any of the other right of centre parties. It was mainly from the Lib Dems and Greens, whose vote was very small. So I think that's the most accurate way of understanding what went on.
What do you think about reform? I mean, I thought their candidate. I don't want to disrespect Rob Kenyon, a hard-working local plumber, but I don't think he was a strong candidate. And I don't think this was a good night for reform because, of course, they said, oh, well, we might lose this because of that awful man, Rupert Lowe, and Restore Britain, and they're going to take away our vote. If only we could get Restore Britain's votes, we would win this. Well, even if they were gifted every single vote that Rebecca Shepherd, the Restore Britain candidate, garnered, Rob Kenyon still would have lost comprehensively to Andy Burnham. Not a good night for reform.
No, but what they seem to be doing in most constituencies, there are some exceptions, is cementing their place as the major right-wing opposition to the Labour Party. And I mean, if the results were bad for the Greens and the Lib Dems on that side, the Conservative vote was derisory, as it has been in many elections recently. So I'm not a supporter of reform, but I think there is some good news in that, in as much as reform seem to have established themselves in the opinion polls and in real votes as the opposition to the Labour Party. And I think the Labour Party will find it easier to beat reform head-on by combining the sort of left of centre votes in most constituencies. So I don't think it's that bad for reform, but it's actually quite good for the Labour Party.
Indeed. A quick word about Restore Britain. They turned out not to be the deciding factor in that election. In fact, they just looked like also-rans, to be honest with you. I mean, would you think they're going to... I mean, we get a lot of our audience supporting Restore Britain. Do you think they will be a force to reckon with going forward, or do you think they'll be... Frankly, they were an also-ran in Makerfield. Do you think that is their position in the firmament?
Let me be clear. I think there have always been racists of one sort or another in all the political parties in this country, quietly so, in many cases. Certainly, I mean, one of the successes of Keir Starmer was to drive down the anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. What worries me about Restore, and I think they are also run, but 6, 7, 8, 9%, which they appear to be registering at the moment, for a party that looks to be expressly racist, I find very disturbing. I've met Rupert, well, I've had a cup of tea with him about nothing to do with party political politics, and he's a very polite, very well-mannered person, easy to talk to. But I think what's going on beneath him in his social media, both of the party and his own, is very disturbing.
Yeah, I like Rupert Lowe. Got a lot of time. He was a regular guest on this show, but I'm not entirely sure that he's fully across what some of his acolytes are up to. I take your point. Let me ask you this, Graham, at the risk of you getting yourself in trouble with who the important former and future bosses of the Labour Party. How would you view the prospect of Ed Miliband, Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Well, just let me be. I mean, it's not completely a joke. Let me tell you, I think if Andy becomes Prime Minister, and he may not still, if he does become, he said he was going to get rid of the whipping system or reform it fundamentally. So I have less to worry about than I have had recently in voting against the whips. In that sense, I welcome that policy. I don't really. To be a serious political party with a programme, you have to have some sort of whipping system, even if occasionally MPs vote against it. As far as Ed Miliband as Chancellor or carrying on as Energy Secretary, I think that's a good way to lose votes. I think ordinary people understand. I don't know what an ordinary person is actually, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
They understand that their energy bills are higher than they otherwise would be because of the green levies. It's as simple as that. They also know that jobs are being lost by not exploiting the North Sea. So I think Ed Miliband's policies are wrong. They are job destroying, and they are making domestic bills higher than they otherwise would need to be.
Graham, maybe we live in interesting times. They're very interesting. Next week's going to be fascinating. I hope you'll come onto my show to discuss. But for the time being, thank you very much for your input and have a lovely weekend. That's the brilliant Graham Stringer, Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton. Now, this train crash, let me bring you up to speed. Still sparse details, but it looks very serious. We're hearing that there are over 30 ambulances, emergency service vehicles in attendance, including an air ambulance. East Midlands Railway are announcing that trains are unable to run between London, St Pancras and Leicester due to this incident. But to reiterate, two trains have collided. When two trains collide, it's always serious. Two trains have collided near Bedford, that's just to the north of London, 30 miles or so, reportedly resulting in serious injuries to those on board. Videos from the scene taken by passengers show what appear to be two East Midlands trains running into each other. Two East Midlands Railway trains have collided. As I say, they are believed to be the 1550 Nottingham to St Pancras International train and also the 1640 Corby to St Pancras International trains. So 30 ambulances at least are there, including an air ambulance. This is obviously very serious. So now we're going to go to break now. When we come back, we'll talk to the Telegraph's transport guru Simon Calder to get his take on this. As I say, apologies for the sparse details, but this is a developing story and we're just at the beginning of it, so we'll try and keep you up to speed. And I'm sure that Simon later on, when the evening show starts, that they'll keep you right across this. This is a major story, folks. So Simon Calder next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Duncan Barks will take over the helm of the good ship Talk at at 7 p.m. I just want to get a little plug in, probably inappropriately, but it's my show, What Just Happened, at 9 o'clock after Duncan finishes his show. That's at 9 o'clock. And as of tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., it's on YouTube, and you can watch that any time you like. Now, let's go straight over now to the travel correspondent now at the Telegraph, Simon Calder. Simon, thank you for joining us. What do you know about what sounds like a very, very serious incident? 2 trains colliding near Bedford. 30 or so ambulances are thought to be there. There's an air ambulance hovering around. This sounds like a very serious crash. What are you hearing?
Well, as you've been reporting, Kevin, details are very sparse at the moment. What I've managed to establish from actually the live data that is on the National Rail system is that indeed the 1640, as you reported from Corby, travelling absolutely normally travelled through Bedford, and it appears that and the train coming south from Nottingham collided. The thing is, they were both heading in the same direction, so this was not an accident in which trains were heading in different directions. But still very serious. And while the details are very patchy, it appears that one train was either stationary or travelling slowly when the other one struck it. And we really don't know much more than that. Obviously, there's some very serious, concerning injuries appearing on social media. And immediately, of course, the line was closed, and that means that certainly for the rest of tonight, quite possibly through the weekend, there will not be trains travelling on the main East Midlands line that connects Leicester with London. Already Thameslink has said, and that is not involved. These are 2 East Midlands trains. Thameslink has said, we advise you not to travel, although this happened between Luton and Bedford in the vicinity of Elstow. It is because Bedford is where those trains normally turn around to and from Brighton. That is going to cause problems. But at the moment, all we can do is say these were the 2 trains involved. It's still difficult to say, and a reminder that rail safety in the UK is almost unparalleled. It is thankfully generally extremely good, and of course there will be the most serious investigation into what's happened here.
Yeah, I mean, again, we mustn't speculate. Details will emerge as the night goes on. But, I mean, in your experience, what are we talking about here? A derailment? When they...
Looks unlikely. I mean, there are, of course, because, I mean, you might remember round about the turn of the century, there were, very sadly, a significant number of fatal rail accidents, as a result of which some really, really serious emergency procedures were put into place, which simply, there are many fail-safe systems, which is why, thankfully, rail accidents are so rare. Very sadly, there are a lot of cases of people being hit by a train, but to have 2 trains colliding is exceptionally rare. As discussed, the fact that they were travelling generally in the same southbound direction is one thing, but it remains to be seen. And all I can do is predict that, knowing how these things are, the 2 stricken trains will remain in place for some indeterminate time while the Rail Accident Investigations Branch comes in to find out what happened and, of course, to try to learn from that.
30 ambulances and an air ambulance, that is not a good sign, is it?
Well, no, and I imagine there will be emergency services from the surrounding area all moving in that general direction, because clearly a Friday evening train southbound from Nottingham is going to be carrying a lot of people. the train from Corby would be more lightly loaded. It just comes through Kettering and Bedford. It mostly picks people up at Luton Airport. So we clearly don't have any indications of how heavily they would be loaded, but certainly the train from Nottingham would be the one with the higher number of passengers on board. And clearly everybody is desperate to find out more, and I hope that the rail that there will be a statement coming from the rail industry, either Network Rail or the emergency services, or indeed East Midlands Railway, to tell us more, because this will have worried a great number of people.
Yeah, and Thameslink, I think you mentioned this, warning people not to travel. From your memory, I mean, sadly, I mean, train crashes used to come along reasonably regularly, too regularly, but they've almost left our consciousness, haven't they?
Yeah.
How long ago was the last serious train crash?
If you go back, I think 5 years, there was a terrible accident at Carmont in Scotland that involved a ScotRail train which hit a mudslide. Again, nothing that could be done, and as a result of that, we very sadly saw several fatalities, including the train crew. But since then, very sadly, trackside workers are sometimes killed in accidents, but passengers generally, you are safer on a train than any other form of transport except possibly air. So rail remains extremely safe, and there will be the deepest possible investigation into what has happened here.
Simon, by the way, this doesn't seem like the right time, but congratulations on your new exalted role at the Telegraph, and thank you so much for coming on to talk about what looks like a serious train crash. Simon Calder there, the excellent new travel correspondent, the travel guru. He's in charge of travel at the Telegraph, moved from the Independent. As I say, well, as Simon and I were stressing, details are very sparse at the moment, but to reiterate what we do know, 2 East Midlands trains have collided. They were both going in the same direction, but it does seem serious. 30 ambulances or so at the scene, air ambulance hovering around as well, and videos from the scene taken by passengers, which of course have been posted on social media, are extremely distressing, apparently. I've got some more information coming in right now. One man posted on Blue Sky that a train heading south from Bedford crashed at 12 minutes past 5. He went on to say, front of train OK, third carriage off the rails. As I discussed with Simon, he said he didn't expect that, but the third carriage is off the rails. He was clearly on the train. He said, I'm OK with bloody legs and back impact. Others are not good. Sudden crash, no slowing down or horns, no warning, no explosion. We just stopped instantly. So this guy's on the train heading south from Bedford at 12 minutes past 5. He said there was no warning, no horns, no slowing down. So they hit each other at full speed. He said no warning, no explosion, just stopped instantly. I'm okay with bloody legs and back impact. Others are not good. Again, he said the front of the train is okay, but the third carriage is off the rails. This is clearly a serious incident. We'll go to break now. Hopefully a few more details might come in while we're off the air. We'll come back in just a minute and keep you posted with this developing story, with this developing very serious story, a serious train crash to the north of London, around the Bedford and Luton area. So we'll keep you up to speed with that. Stay where you are.
got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership and a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Apologies for this half an hour or so, the last half hour of the show. We would normally have taken all of your calls. I've got lots of calls waiting to talk about Makerfield, the ramifications of that. Will Keir Starmer step down next week? How soon will Andy Burnham be our Prime Minister, etc., etc.? But we're not going to be able to do that because there is an awful story developing just to the north of London. Two trains have collided, and I've got more details about the seriousness of this horrific accident. Just posted, I just told you about one man posting on Blue Sky, the social media site, that he has got bloody legs and a back impact, but others are not good. Front of train okay, third carriage off the rails, sudden crash, no slowing down or horns, no warning, no explosion. We just stopped instantly with a bang, obviously. Now, I just told you there are 30 or so ambulances. There's at least one air ambulance there. And Bedford Hospital, the local hospital, is expecting, the Times is reporting this, that is expecting at least 50 casualties to arrive. 50 casualties, and the hospital has been ordered to put all hands on deck, and the Times understands that appeals have been sent to several departments for staff to come back to work to assist. Staff were also told, and this is the very bleak news, to expect potential fatalities. Footage from the scene appeared to show two East Midlands railway trains colliding with each other. Rail provider Thameslink, as I told you, is telling customers there are no services, don't even try to travel right now, particularly between Bedford and Luton. It is urging all travellers who are intending to go anywhere near that area to put off your travel plans. Just spoke to Simon Calder, the travel correspondent, of course, of the Telegraph, and he was saying, you know, it's been 5 years since our last serious train crash. That was up in Scotland, where a train went straight into a mudslide. Obviously, act of God, not much you can do about that, but they're rare now, train crashes. There used to be a sort of rather tragic regular occurrence, but because of that, there's been a real safety crackdown by Network Rail, by of all the railway companies, and safety on the rails has improved no end. But nothing is ever perfect, and this is seriously worrying. Two trains collided near Bedford. A lot of people posting distressing images, as this always happens, doesn't it, on social media, but people involved say, well, at least one man saying that while he is slightly injured, others are rather seriously injured, and there's that very, very distressing line. Staff at Bedford Hospital have been told to expect fatalities. 50 casualties at least, all hands on deck at Bedford Hospital. Staff being asked to come back staff who are off work asked to come back to work to help. So, as I say, one doesn't want to sort of sensationalise this, but this is clearly an extremely serious crash, an extremely serious train crash. Always bad when two trains collide. As Simon Calder was pointing out, the unusual aspect of this collision is that both the trains were heading in the same direction. If I got this right, I think they were both heading south. So not a head-on collision, as they're absolutely dreadful, they are. But nevertheless, it looks as if at least one carriage has come off the rails. 12 minutes past 5 is when it seems to have happened. As our friend on Blue Sky said, he's got bloody legs and a back impact. Others are not good. He said there was a sudden crash, no slowing down, so they hit each other at full speed. That is alarming. No slowing down or horns, no warning, no explosion. They just stopped instantly, obviously, with quite a crash, and 50 people injured. And staff at Bedford Hospital, the local hospital, being told all hands on deck, and all hands on deck. Everybody come back to work. So you can only imagine the scenes at Bedford Hospital. At least 50 casualties, and they're being told to expect fatalities. Honestly, folks, this is a major story, a catastrophe, a tragedy by the looks of it as well, a tragedy. The trains, just to reiterate, they're East Midland Railway trains. They are believed to be the 1550 Nottingham to St Pancras, so heading south, and the 1640 Corby to St Pancras, heading south. They both crashed into each other in the same direction. Unusual, that. 30 ambulances on the scene, at least one air ambulance. The hospital on red alert because this is serious, folks. This is very, very serious. Duncan Barks is going to pick up on this story. He's obviously going to dominate the evening exchange tonight from 7 o'clock until 9 p.m. 9 p.m. It seems very inappropriate, but it's my show, What Just Happened. If this is serious enough, what just happened might have to take a back seat, you know what I mean? But Duncan Barks is in the studio. This is horrific.
It is, and it's just starting to trickle out what we know inside the last 20 minutes in terms of what's occurred, and people taking to social media, just explaining what they've experienced. I mean, one of the messages that has been seen is from a chap called Dr. Pete Knapp. He posted on Blue Sky, the social media channel, saying trains heading south from Bedford crashed at 5:12 p.m. Front of train OK, third carriage off rails. I'm OK with bloody legs and back impact. Others are not so good. Sudden crash, no slowing down or horns, no warning, no explosion, just stopped instantly. So
yeah. So we were just reading that one out earlier. But you know what is unusual about this is that both the trains were heading in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's too early to speculate, but when you hear from the local hospital saying that they're expecting around 50 casualties...
And fatalities.
We know it's something that potentially could be one of those incidents that happen, it seems to me, every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I was talking to Simon Calder, the travel correspondent of The Telegraph, and we were discussing how rare train crashes are now. You and I are of a certain age. We can remember when they used to come around about every 6-9 months, sometimes extremely devastating. But they've become much rarer. There's been a big safety crackdown by Network Rail, apparently. So when you get this, the last one was 5 years ago in Scotland. Remember when that train piled into that mudslide? When you get them now, they're all the more shocking because they're all the more rare.
This is true, so we'll keep people updated throughout the evening. As soon as we get information, we'll share it here on Talk. We put calls out to all kinds of organisations, both locally, also nationally as well, and to the rail companies involved. So as soon as we get some kind of reaction or response, or indeed someone who can come on Talk to tell us the very latest, we'll bring it to people across the United Kingdom. So that's very much a live news story that we'll be covering tonight here on Talk. And, of course, the political chat continues for a Friday evening.
Yeah, if you're lucky. I mean, this could blot out everything. I mean, you know, Makerfield's extremely serious, extremely important and significant. The very future of this country is at the crossroads. Will Keir Starmer actually quit next week? There is speculation he will.
What's your hunch?
I think he will lay out, what do they call it, is
timeline for departure.
Timeline for departure.
Yeah, I think so too. I think maybe
because the
on
Times
Monday.
are reporting he's going to spend the weekend with his family.
He's going to
a period of reflection.
Yeah, he'll. So I've spoken to Victoria over the weekend. That's his wife,
Queen Vic. They call her.
Queen Vic, and I've taken counsel, and I think we'll either see a blue lectern, not a blue lectern, a wooden lectern, or possibly there'll be some interview that he does where he says, listen, I've heard what people are saying, I'll lay out a timetable, and I think we might end up with Burnham and Downing Street by September.
Yeah, if not earlier. I mean, I was just saying that to Graham Stringer and to Simon Danjic, you know, there's a lot of talk about, it'd be very unhealthy if Andy Burnham gets a coronation, is just ushered